Ray, do we have a pastor here tonight? No, we do not. So I'm going to go ahead now and call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, May 18, 2020 to order. And Mr. Marler, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Would you join me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up, agenda approval. Does any of the council members have any changes or recommendations that they would like? Mr. Braden?
I think Captain Nix is going to introduce Captain Mike. Is that correct? Do we need to add that to the agenda or no? Can we just slide that in somewhere?
You just did.
Fair enough.
Where would you like to do that? During item 2, we'll make it item 2C?
2C, right after Mr. Woods. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mayor, I would like to pull items G, 1, and 2 and put them before the city manager report. I had to pull those items at the last meeting because we got around to it so late, and I'd hate to do it again tonight.
So you want to pull G, 1, and 2?
Well, I'd like to discuss them earlier.
Earlier,
if
okay.
That's okay.
Well, I tell you, and you would like to move them under the city, item 4, city manager's report?
That would be great if there's no
Okay,
objections.
HI. We'll make that item J and item K. How's that sound? Is that good with everyone?
Mayor,
So J will be 1 and K will be 2 under Mr. Morgan's. Go ahead, sir.
I would like to move item I, 4I, and move it up to first position 4A as an accommodation to a few of our folks from the fire district who are going to have to run back. We'd like to get that. I'd like to get them at the beginning if possible.
Okay, so what we're going to do here at Council Member Destin's request is move item 4I to 4A1, basically. You guys okay with that? Everyone fine with that? You fine with that, Steve? Mr. Overdeer? Okay, cool. All right. Anything else? We'll go ahead and those will be, thank you. I have a motion. Got a second? Do a roll call vote. Mr. Morgan, we're going to change it up. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler?
Yes.
Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
Vote is unanimous, so moved. All right. Item 1A, approval of minutes of February 18th, 2020, regular city council meeting.
I make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
So moved. Boy, is unanimous. Item 1B, the approval of minutes of January 21, 2020, regular city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler?
Yes.
Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
All righty. We have a proclamation tonight. Let's see what I do with it. And I'm just going to read it here because if I go up to the microphone up there, then one of our staffers is going to have to clean it. So we'll just read it here. And then after that, we got a presentation by Mr. Wood and then an introduction by Captain Nix. National Public Works Week. It starts here. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities, and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Destin. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of public work professionals who are managers and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, natural environment, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public's interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of Destin to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year of 2020 marks the 60th Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Gary Jarvis, Mayor of Destin, Florida, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby designate the week May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week, and urge all citizens to join with us to pay tribute to our public work professionals, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contribution they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. So done this 18th day of May, 2020. Sign me. Our Public Works Department, Michael, would you like to come up, receive this proclamation? Thank you, sir. Appreciate everything your whole team does. All right, next up, Mr. Jim Wood to give us an update on the census responsible rates in Destin. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, about a few months ago, I was in this room, and I think Ms. Nisha Barron was here talking about the census, and I believe Mr. Destin asked me to volunteer to help do this, and I've been doing that ever since. Some days well and some days not so well. So, okay, first slide, please. There's my little emoji I made up, anatomically correct, with a fishing pole in his hand. Slide, please. Okay, quickie review. Of course, the census is mandated by law. It's not too late to take part. The census was supposed to be pretty much done by now, but because of COVID-19, it's going to go on probably until the end of the year, as I've been told. I haven't seen that in writing, but that's what I've been told verbally. It is quick and easy. When I did mine online, it took me 7.5 minutes, and it was done. And it is safe and secure. Your personal data will not be released for 72 years and 1 day. 72 years was the average age of folks back then, so they added 1 day to it. So theoretically, you'd be passed on before they released your data. Next slide, please. Why is it important? Easy enough. Congressional representation, billions of dollars in federal dollars. Local taxation, a big deal for us in Destin. And for me, things like local TPO and other representation get done through the census count. Slide, please. Okay, the numbers we're all here to see. Kind of a good news, semi-good news story. If you look at the Destin at the bottom of the first chart, the yellow part, our overall response rate is only about 29.3%, which sounds not so good. If you look at the green number beside it, it's 54.5, which is almost equal to the county average. So that 54.5 is the average of the 3 green areas in the bottom chart. That's the main areas where our residents live in Destin. So all the other areas you see in the second chart are Holly Isle, which is mostly second homes and short-term rentals. The other ones are going to be Kelly Plantation, which is actually not in the city. And the other one is going to be Regatta Bay, Emerald Bay, and Crystal Beach, which Crystal Beach is, but the other 2 aren't. So a couple of issues I'm working with the Census Bureau to make sure we get our actual city population counted and not things outside the city. It would actually help us for dollars, but it wouldn't be right. So still a work in progress, not bad. If you flip over to the next slide, please. This is a map depiction. There are 6 census tracts that make up our census data. So the numbers I put up there equate to the approximate locations of the 6 census tracts. So as you can see, what we call the village in Destin is those 3 green areas, and they're 54.5, so basically at the county average. The other ones are the outliers, and whether the Census Bureau will come up with some kind of an initiative that looks at those areas and factors out short-term rentals so they're not counted against us, that's the question that's not answered so far. So not a bad news story. It's going on. It's still going on. I would love to see those green numbers more in the 65 to 70 range, which would match Niceville across the board, because their population will mirror ours pretty closely in the end, I think. And that affects local things like TPO representation. In 2010, when we did the last census, you probably won't see the population come out in any new apportionment. I think we did the TPO in 2013, so it was a 3-year lag, so it's going to be a while. So hopefully the population numbers will come out maybe in 2021 sometime. I know that the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, BEBR, they do an estimate each year of population for all the Florida cities, and they have us at 13,441 right now. So I would expect our new population to be fairly close to that. So, yes, sir.
Now, on these percentages, that's up till now when it's all been
Right.
online and stuff like that.
Correct.
Now, in the next stage, there'll be workers canvassing our neighborhoods to increase
There
that?
could be. It depends on whether the Census Bureau feels there's a serious undercount. Now, the numbers you see here are going to be mainly online numbers, maybe some phone call numbers, but you won't see any written form numbers yet. Now, those numbers are probably not that large, but like anything else, they're going to be counted last. So there could be a percentage or two maybe that were written forms that have not been counted. So most folks are doing it online, so I would ask you, for all your friends and neighbors out there that maybe haven't done it, if you could kind of cajole them and get them to go do it. It only takes a few minutes. Again, this is the horse race, the gauge of public interest in the community. What really matters is the population that comes out later on. So I'll keep you apprised of changes, subject to your questions.
Any council members have any questions for?
I just have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Overdeer.
Jim, down there at the Holiday Isle, in past censuses, has there been any determination of how many of these, I know there's like 900 houses down here, but I mean, do we know approximately how many of those are short-term rentals and the people don't really live there and they won't be counted in the census? Because this number looks awfully low. I just can't imagine that we're that busy down here that we haven't been able to turn in our census.
I don't know the exact number of full-time versus short-term residences. I know I went to the Holiday Isle board and asked them to send out an email to all their members, both local and out of town, and it was over 2,000 folks that I guess got the email. So it's a lot of folks. So when that percentage is low, it really drags down our overall response rate. I guess if you went online to the property appraiser site, you could check homestead exemptions and see who's a full-time resident, who's not. Might be a way to do that. Whether the Census Bureau is doing something like that, I'm not sure right now, but that'll be a question. I'll keep asking to get answers to those two things. If you would flip
So
the
this would probably be one of those areas where they would start knocking door to door.
That will be probably not till later this fall if they do it. I mean, they're going to look at the addresses. I think they're using an address list from 2010 and comparing those that respond this year. So if your response rate is under some percentage, I'm not sure what that is, then they will send folks down to do counts. And they are hiring folks at $16.50 an hour to do that kind of count right now. So there's your last thing. So if you haven't done the online, there's the website. There's the 1-844 number to do the call in. So, and again, $16.50 an hour for folks that want to work part-time with the Census Bureau.
I got another question here. Ms. Ramswell?
Thanks. I know that you have reached out to Rotary and some of the different groups around here. What about homeowners associations, specifically Holiday Isle? Have you gotten with them and seen how they might be able to encourage?
Well, I did contact the board there. They did send out an email for me to all their members. It was a little over 2,000 folks, as I was told. So at least we tried to reach out to folks, but because most of those folks are out of town, it's not going to move the needle that much. So if there was some way to factor out those short-term rentals out of that number, that number would really rise. So, yes, sir.
I've noticed the percentages, one of it's high as 57%, one's as low as 52. What's acceptable? I mean, it would seem like having half of your population not being accounted for themselves doesn't do our city any good. So,
well, this is one of those kind of like the polling before an election. I mean, we can see polls every day, and polls are nice horse race things. The news guys like to report on them, but at the end of the day, other than showing the basic interest in your citizens in doing the census. I mean, the numbers are going to, by hook or crook, are going to get counted. We can do it the cheap way, which is online or by phone call, or we can do it the expensive way by sending counters down here. It's going to get done one way or the other. Okay, they want to get the count right. That's important. So, any other questions?
Any other questions, folks? Mr. Overdeer or Mr. Mitchell? Nope.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, sir. So basically, a word to all those of you that are watching online or here in the audience, get online and be counted. I did it, and it was about the same time frame, about 7.5, 8 minutes. Didn't take very long at all. Of course, it's just Pam and I at the house, so I didn't have to run around in all the rooms counting people. All right, up next, Charlie Nix, Captain Nix, would you like to introduce, unfortunately, your replacement, but fortunately, a replacement?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. There has been some there will be some retirements coming up in the Sheriff's Office at the beginning of the month, and it's created some upward mobility for some and some shift for others. And for me, it's going to shift me to Central, and it's going to bring Captain Howell from the airport over to District 3. So my position as a District 3 commander will actually change to District 2 commander. And I wanted to make sure that I introduced him to you, the council, and staff. And I want to let you know, I started my career out here in 92, 93. I've been in and out of Destin most of my career working. Being your captain, your liaison, I guess, for 3.5, almost 4 years. I've enjoyed working with everybody, especially the staff. I'm not going far, just going over the bridge, over the second bridge. So, but I want to introduce Captain Mike Howell to you.
How you doing? First off, I know I got big shoes to fill with Captain Nix, and he's just a phone call away. But you will not see a change in the service. You will still see the continued dedication to serving our citizens here under my leadership. And Captain Nix, just like I said, just a phone call away. If I need anything, I can reach out to him, and I got the full Sheriff's Office support. So we will continue to march on and serve our citizens proudly.
Thank you, Bud. Very nice to meet you. We're going to miss you, boss.
Just going over the bridge.
Yep.
I appreciate
I'll lure
it,
you
Mayor.
back over
Thank
here
you.
for lunch.
There we go.
Thank you for changing the agenda to get the introduction on there. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for everything you and all your deputies do for our city and our county. Appreciate it. All right. Next up is we have public comment. And Ray, did we have any cards? We suspended cards, that's right, because of our new protocols. So, as you notice, I changed our roll call voting for tonight, just to throw everybody up here a curveball. So I'm going to do the same thing in the audience. I'm going to start over here and work that way. I know some of you are used to going the other way around, just so we don't get bored here, right? So I'm going to look over to this side of the room, and I'm just going to work my way over. You guys know the deal. Address the council, or me personally if you need to, so you don't call the council members' names out. And just give your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes to share your thoughts with us on any item that's not a public hearing, that's on the agenda or even not on the agenda. This is your time to share with our council people and myself your thoughts and ideas and concerns for the community. Mr. Wampler, you look like you're ready to go, and I'll come on up. Got a nice clean podium too.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. Good to see you all tonight. I'm here to speak on the resolution that you have on the agenda to support the vacation rentals. As you all may or may not know, the county staff worked diligently Friday night and Saturday and submitted the letter to request that the governor open vacation rentals in Okaloosa County effective immediately. That was submitted Saturday at 12:35. One of the questions that I've heard a lot about is why did it take so long? The reality is the executive order, even though the governor talked about it at 11:45, the executive order didn't actually make it to the county's office until 6 p.m. Friday night. So I'm not saying that it was lightning fast, but under the circumstances, it got done pretty fast. And so I'm here to speak and ask you all to support that. I did read your resolution. I think you've layered in there something that you feel strongly about, and I appreciate that, and that is the local rule. My concern is I would ask that you be careful, and if you're going to make a resolution to support what the county is doing to open up vacation rentals, then that should be the resolution and leave it at that. So my 2 cents would be, don't try to take this as an opportunity to expand the restrictions on vacation rentals, because that hurts 33,000 people in the Okaloosa County area and obviously hurts my business significantly. So I ask you to take consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My screen went blank over here, Ray. Thank you, sir. Yeah, we'll just leave it on. Anyone over here? And in the middle, anybody raise your hand if you'd like to chat? I'm working my way over. Ma'am, come on up.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Mary Ann Wines with the Destin Fishing Fleet, 210 Harbor Boulevard, speaking about item 4J. In 1992, the Destin Fishing Fleet had an idea that we could build the facility we now own, and by so doing, protect the fishing community. Royal Melvin wanted 2 things. He wanted to help us achieve that, and he wanted the income from the slips opposite his land, which he did not have the money to permit and build. We gave him both of his objectives by leasing from him, for 99 years, a waterfront maintenance easement across 10 feet of his land and the right to acquire the necessary submerged land lease from the DEP to construct boat slips opposite his upland. He received from that the rent from 6 of the boat slips. We got the right to construct additional slips that we could not have built if we'd had to observe the setbacks that his ownership would otherwise have required. In short, we got to use a part of his waterfront, and we both benefited, and we now know that the entire city of Destin benefited. No offense intended, but all that has been public record. You knew all of the above when the city purchased Mr. Melvin's property, expressly subject to the existing lease that he and the Destin Fishing Fleet had negotiated. Our boat slips were located exactly as they are today at the time you bought the Royal Melvin property. If any of you, any council member, any lawyer, or any member of the audience disputes one word of what I've just said, then please tell me what word that is. I ask you the question, who really believes the city of Destin should, or legally could, change the deal made by others prior to the time the city of Destin bought Mr. Melvin's property? Who is intended to benefit from that? You are about to spend city money again on something you have already been debated from the same council member and previously chose not to attempt. Who is intended to benefit? Get honest answers to that question and you will know why this has come up again. I would respectfully ask that you vote to not have the city added to the Fleet Submerged Land Lease, a lease that was never part of the upland you purchased, and another taking that you cannot go unanswered. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Wines, I have a couple questions for you. Oh,
Go
I'll
ahead,
wait
come-
till you get to the mic.
Go back up to the podium.
You mentioned that the prior owner did not have the money to do slips and stuff, and so but isn't it true he actually already had docks on that land with slips?
They pulled up to the land. He had two, maybe 3, and he got 6 of them. And they needed to be redone. He had no submerged land lease. It was messy.
Okay, but he did have slips, so at the time, and then, we won't get into the...
There were boats back there.
Okay, so, and then you mentioned that there was the lease already in existence and the city took that over, but aren't the terms very different from the lease that you had with Melvin versus the lease that was executed in 2010?
The terms are different now. The city changed the terms, not the fleet. The fleet neither requested nor supported the city's changes.
But you signed them.
But y'all were going to lose the grant. So we regretfully agreed to the city's changes.
But the submerged land always, all along, has been part Melvin's property and part your property. And
I
then
don't dispute the
city-
upland ownership.
But you want to just
I
have the
dispute-
fleet listed as the owner.
The fleet owns 210, the city owns 206.
Right.
The state of Florida owns the submerged land.
Correct.
Melvin gave up his submerged land by lease for 99 years to the Destin Fishing Fleet. The city took over that agreement. So when the city tries to become the owner of the submerged land lease, that is untrue.
Right, but the city is trying to be listed as an upland owner, which
You are
we are.
listed as an upland owner.
We are not on the inspection report or the last lease. And I think that's where we're aiming to get it clarified.
When you brought this up in 2018, and you didn't get a second, and it was not agreed by council to have it investigated, someone from the city called the DEP and had it investigated. So in 1993, when we went through all this the first time, your lawyers, our lawyers, and the DEP lawyers, we got it the way it should be. That's never changed. We renew it year to year to year. We don't make any changes to it. That's the way it's always been. In 2018, when I went to renew my submerged land lease, they told me that it was under investigation, and I told them, fine, let me know what they needed. They said, we have everything we need. They renewed the submerged land lease in 2018 with no problem. Everything was fine. So I've spoken with the DEP, and everything is good. But to add the city to the submerged land lease, you are the upland owner, no doubt, of that 68 feet. I don't dispute that. Nobody disputes that. I do dispute that the city should be a part of the Destin Fishing Fleet's land lease. You had asked one time before, you actually pitched a fit about it, you might, let me finish, to waive the 25-foot setback. I don't know if that's your end game now or not. Why don't you tell me what your end game is?
Well, it's exactly the letter that we have tonight that we're going to discuss as a council and send forward, because there is great concern that on the documentation that is listed with the DEP, the city is not listed as an upland owner. And we need to make sure that that is rectified and clarified for the sake of our grants and other ownership purposes of the upland property.
We're going to have that discussion. If you're done with your questioning, Marianne, thank you for your answers. So we're going to move on to the rest of public comment. Thank you. Okay. All right. Mr. Bill?
Good evening to y'all. Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida. I just wanted to give you my thoughts in reference to your short-term rental at the end of the evening here tonight. There was a lawsuit filed in federal court in Tampa on Monday against the governor, okay? My caution to you all is if you watch the news conference that happened on Friday, it was not probably the last question, or maybe the second to last question that somebody asked him about short-term rentals, and that's when he deferred to, we're going to give it to the counties, okay? And that part's great, except then y'all are talking about doing something here again in terms of your resolution, okay? My caution to you all is I'm of the opinion that all the governor is doing is passing the buck, so that when this does get to the court case level, because they're not going to give up down in Tampa, okay? This is happening, it is happening today, okay? It's referencing a number of people all over the state of Florida from different areas in reference to short-term rentals. When I did a little research on the city of Destin in terms of our Okaloosa County courthouse, I found that between 2019 and 2020, there's been 21 cases in front of the court system, okay, for whatever reason, okay? And to get to 21, in the years previous to that, you had to go back all the way to 2012. So I hate to say that it's turning into a litigious society, but guess what? It is, okay? So once again, I would caution you in reference to your home rule, because what that might potentially do is make you part of the lawsuit that the mayor, or not the mayor, that the governor is trying to avoid, okay? And when I think about the home rule thing, I think about the time where you were going to charge me a $10,000 fine if I cut down a tree at my house on my property. And that kind of went away pretty quickly, okay? But once again, I'm cautioning you about your resolution here, okay? I'm all in favor of going after the governor to open up short-term rentals, as I think we all will agree, especially when we get to the budget part. There's no thousands and thousands of dollars worth of 11.5 cents tax that's going to be coming this way anymore, at least for a while. Okay, you've already lost coming up into month number 5, so how much money have you lost versus last year? So that would be my caution in reference to this resolution, okay? I would just ask be careful, because the people that are going after the governor are not going to give up. You know, and at this stage of the game, because of the past histories, we still have 65 Bert Harris claims that are in some sort of stage. We don't seem to talk about that anymore.
Can you wrap it up, Bill?
So, and because it's rather apparent they're not going away. And when I looked at it the first time, the first 36, there was 36 million worth of property value that went away. So just, I'm saying tread slowly. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it very much. Still looking here in the center part of the room. Come on up, sir.
Jason Klosterman, 1014 Airport Road. I'd just like to hear the council address a few questions I may have tonight as far as the submerged land lease with the fleet marina. More specifically, how it would impact the charter fleet. Is the city trying to acquire that submerged land lease? Do they feel they have a right to it? Is there a setback that would require all of the slips on that dock to become transient slips? And would that require all the charter boats there to vacate those slips? Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Still at the center of the room. All right, I'm going to move over into the next group. Start right here in the middle. Anybody want to speak? Step up. I see Miss Carrie has stepped up first. Come on up, ma'am.
Carrie Harbarger, Spring Lane. I've been coming to these meetings probably pretty regularly since 2013, and my biggest voice here has pretty much always been natural resources for the people. I'm going to talk about 3 parks tonight. First, I didn't come to the last meeting, and I know that it's over with, and I want to say one thing. I personally feel like I hope we're addressing the fact that we're done giving land away. I felt people should have been accountable. I felt we handled that wrong. People should have been accountable. I don't know why we don't, maybe I'm out of line by bringing charges against people. Could we just give land? Can people not be held accountable? I know other people that have. I won't say names. There were attorneys in this town. They were held accountable for those kind of things. That fella knew he had nothing when he bought it. They went into that deal together, obviously. It was very blatant. And I didn't have any dog in the fight, and I just come to these meetings, and I sat and watched them. That's not a part, but it was a potential part. And obviously, I'm here to share my discontent for putting a firehouse at our Calhoun Park. And I really feel like I've heard some voices today. I understand the need for first responders to be closer to the destined proper. I just don't understand why we couldn't have some workshops and maybe work this out. We don't have a lot of stuff as far as the assets to the people here that don't live on the water. I understand this was 2 years in the making, but I feel a little sideswiped because I don't know a whole lot about it. We never did any workshops about it, and I hear a lot of anger. We also have a 20-foot, I think, do we not have a 25-foot easement on that land way to the north side of that property? We can't put a dock on that the fire department can't keep a boat at? However, I know there's been a lot of work done on this, but I feel like there should have been some workshops and that the public could have been a little bit more involved, because I want to say one thing. Again, mentioned that this might cater to Crab Island. Crab Island is not our responsibility, and I don't see why the citizens have to give up anything to cater to the needs of the Crab Island. That's state parks. Where are they going to, what's in it for us? Now, there was a mention that perhaps, and I haven't done my homework to be really honest, I haven't seen the actual blueprints. There might have been some verbiage along the lines that people, in exchange for a dock for the fireboat, might get a dock for us to use, but let's keep in mind, we're going to lose a swimming area for the people, obviously. So what good is giving the people a dock if we can't use it? Okay, I feel like we should readdress it and have a little workshop and work with the people a little bit more on this. We don't have a lot of asset. We have two of the greatest assets we have is the Calhoun Park and now the Leonard Destin Park. That's, I have to say about that, along with another one. Moving on to, we never got answers about the contamination that sits on the concrete plant. Oh, let me back up one more thing. I did give some thought about other land that was on sale directly across from Calhoun Park. Mr. Nigerian is selling that land there. What a great opportunity maybe to put something there that we could be right across the way, not take so much, okay, thought process. Back to the concrete plant. We've never followed up about the contamination on that land and the fly ash. And we've also never followed up with the fact that there's 3 tanks still buried on that land that nobody ever had any answers to because there were never tests done at. As a matter of fact, the person that was sent out to do that study had never done a study. She was hired to do a study.
Carrie, your time's up. Can you wrap it up 15 seconds, please?
Sure. We never got answers on that, but I wanted to say that I go by there all the time and I take pictures so I could learn the atmosphere. I want to say that in the event we wanted to look for those tanks and maybe clean them up before we decide our children should play on that. There's a power pole on the side, and common sense would tell you that a tank would take power. I think we know where they might be, so.
We got another opportunity at the end. You can chat some
I might not be here. I wasn't sure how this was running. Okay.
Yeah, you're out of time.
Good.
Sorry.
Got
a lot of people.
No,
All right.
thank you. Have a good.
All right. Next. Come on up. Yeah, don't be shy. Next person, be ready.
I have 2 things I'd like to speak to tonight. The first one is the $25,000 that y'all voted on for Harbor Lane. What's the status of that? I need to know the status of that. I don't know if you do that now or sometime during the meeting or when you want to do it.
It might be appropriate for me to address it under my item.
Okay.
And we'll get clarification there.
All right. And the other thing is that under Councilman Morgan's item, the Coleman Lake outfall, I've been asking for over a year to have the, whatever those cane things are that are down there removed so that our kids who have been in quarantine for months now haven't been able to throw cast nets or fish there or do any of that. And now it's gotten so thick and so dense, you can't even see the little dock that you've worked so hard to put out there. So I think that needs to be cleaned off. The rest of it I'd like to reserve for Mr. Morgan's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next. Come on up. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I know. I was going to ask.
As Teresa Hebert, 716 Main Street, as chairwoman of Parks and Recreation, we are addressing Joe's Bayou, the little Main Street park. Those bamboo reeds are going to be removed. We have an arborist that's got to come in and verify the 2 trees in there are not sanctified trees, and we can remove them first and then clear it out. We did have our folks move a big chunk in the center, so you could at least do some fishing. It's not perfect, but it was a start until we could get the arborist hired in. So that is being addressed, and that's been going in the works now for about 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured with that being a natural area that we just couldn't come in there with a hatchet and start chopping down bamboo. All right, next up, ma'am. Thank you for the clarification, Teresa.
Hi, Joanne Bouchelon. I live here in Planet in Moreno Acres, and I'd like to talk to Councilman Morgans. I believe it's been pushed up, I'm not quite sure, but just a couple of things. I got involved with the right-of-way on Harbor Lane about 2.5 years ago and became very passionate about it. Exactly 2 weeks ago today, we were here trying to fight to keep that portion of the right-of-way. Unfortunately, even though we had 250 signatures and 250 of our community behind us, we lost. We basically lost that portion of land. I've lived in Destin for 20 years. My daughter went to elementary school, middle school, and high school here. And I have seen so many changes in Destin over the past 20 years, changes that I don't like. I don't like it. Our green space and our personal spaces are being taken 0.52, 0.76, 0.72, whatever that figure is, because people get up to the podium and they can't even give you the exact amount that they want, but it's still being given to them. So I had the original plat of our neighborhood, and it actually shows an additional right-of-way, and somehow that disappeared over the years too. I can't find anything where that was given, but it was closed off and is now private property, and it's adjacent to it. So my question for council is, how many right-of-ways do we have currently that have water access in the city limits? Does anybody know that?
Part of my motion tonight is going to be direct staff to identify all of them.
I've kind of gone through them, and I'm surprised in a biking distance from my house how many we do have. So we may have lost that small piece of a right-of-way, which was a partial vacation, but we're here to fight the bigger war, and that is we need to stop this. We need to put a tourniquet on this, and we need to stop these right-of-ways from being given away. And I understand it was such a difficult decision for each and every one of you. So I'm asking that we go with, I don't believe it should be up to council. I believe the people of Destin need to have a say in what land we give away and what land we keep. I believe every voice in the city of Destin counts, and it should count. We shouldn't have to sit up here and have 6 or 7 people deciding for us what's important, because the park over at Calhoun is important to some people, but you had 250 people within a walking or biking distance that stood up and said that park was important to them. Granted, it was a right-of-way. Because of all the changes and everything, it wasn't considered a park. But anyway, my next thing real quick is I would request that if there is a referendum, and it does go to referendum, it's not just the vacation of right-of-way, but it could be a portion of the right-of-way, or a partial should be addressed also. Because if we start giving away partial pieces of land, the next person can come in behind because it belongs to each of the homeowners on each side. If we give it to one, the other can petition, and that's what's going to happen. And one more question, are there any other applications that are on file right now for vacations of land in Destin? And if so, I would ask that it would be put on that referendum to be held until the citizens of Destin vote. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next. Don't jump all up at once. Come on up. Hurry up.
My name is Wendy Alsop, 220 Grand Key Loop West, Destin, Florida. And I want to speak to say thank you to Mayor Jarvis. My husband and a lot of our friends' husbands have been in combat and given their lives for causes that they believe in. And you are a hero in our book, and it means the world to us that you were willing to stand up for our community and our jobs that our short-term rentals provide. And that we felt like you actually understood where we were, and it took a lot of guts to be brave and go against certain things, and I want you to know that we have your back, and it makes me very sad that others would have anything negative to say about what you have done for us and our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, anyone over there? Going once, going twice. I want to remind everyone that there will be another opportunity for public comment after tonight's activities come to a close. And we'll address some of the things that the folks have spoke about in the interim. So I got one more gentleman to come up and share, and then we will press on with our next portion.
Hello, good evening. My name is Reed Ingram. I have JD's Towers, Unit 940, and I also have 445 Biscayne Bay, Villages of Crystal Beach. My fiance runs one of the hotels that the Hilton owns, and that's not a Hilton itself, but it's a subsidy of the Hilton properties. And the thinking of how the hotels are operating with and this is just coming from her, how the hotels are operating and the short-term rentals are not is just crazy. I mean, you got people packing in 4 or 5 people in elevators. Yes, there are only supposed to be 2 in there. 2 people in an elevator is still not 6 feet distancing. I don't know if y'all have ever measured a hotel, but that is not 6 feet. But why y'all allowing that? I don't know. Passing in a hotel. Then you go into Lowe's or Home Depot, and that's like a playground. I mean, that place is packed, which I'm not negative about Home Depot or Lowe's, but I'm just how, if I check into a short-term rental with my family, who I know where they've been, what they've been doing the last 2 weeks, and you have 30 or 40 feet distancing from the other house next door, but the allowing of a hotel, and I'm telling you, I saw it with my own eyes, the breakfast at one of these hotels, there was probably about 80 people in line waiting to get food, and it was all the way in. And I'm not negative about other things. I'm just trying to understand the thought of how hotels are operating and short-term rentals, which have distancing, which have people staying in the short-term rentals knowing who's with them, and yet you are just crossing people back and forth, not knowing where they've been, where they're coming from, and so on and so forth. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, Reed,
yes, sir.
We understand that dynamic, and that's why we encourage the governor to end his ban on short-term rentals.
Yes, sir.
Based on some of the thought processes. It doesn't seem fair or moral from that standpoint, and it really doesn't compare safety-wise. So I just want to let you know, this council in this city wasn't part of the short-term rental ban. That was an executive order by the governor. Since then, this council in this city and our county commissioners have worked tirelessly, especially in the last 48 hours, to get that ban lifted.
And Wendy's been keeping us informed on a regular basis.
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all very much. Have a
thank
good
you.
evening.
All right. Anyone else would like to come up? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period, and we will move on with the rest of our agenda. We got a lot on our plate tonight. So let's see.
Gary, just real quick, you need to check the online comments.
Huh?
If there are any virtual
yeah.
public comments or with Ray too.
Welcome to the new normal. Matt, go ahead, sir.
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Hey, I tell you what, Mr. Bowman's checking my 6. I appreciate that. Ray, do you have any email comments? Okay, you have none. So now I'll officially close the public comment period at this portion of the meeting. Up next is the city manager report. We moved item I to AA, and then I also misspoke when I said those other 2 agenda items for Mr. Morgan. That will be item L and item N. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The first item, formally item 4I, is staff is requesting direction on a proposed lease with the Destin Fire Control District regarding a portion of Clement Taylor Park. And we have both Ms. Kopp, staff, and members of the Fire Control District here to answer questions that council may have.
This one requires a motion, and so I'll entertain a motion for discussion.
Mayor, if I could just explain it just really briefly. So this is a lease that was negotiated between the fire district's attorney and myself, it currently has a $1 a year rent for a 20-year term that can be renewed, but if it gets renewed, it would come back to council, at which time rent or any other term could be potentially renegotiated. You'd have your sole discretion in approving another term. But what I wanted to make sure everyone knew is that we're just looking for you to okay the terms of the lease tonight or not. If you do approve the terms of the lease, it will come back to you as an ordinance as required by the charter, and then we'd have 2 readings with public hearings.
So there'll be virtually 4 opportunities to talk about it, counting tonight.
Yes.
All right. At this moment.
Mr. Mayor, you looking for a motion?
Yes, sir, I am.
I'll make that motion if you'd like.
Hey, we got a motion to approve the lease. Do I have a second? I have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any comment?
Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Can I invite Commissioner Buckingham to come up? And since we do have some members of the public and some folks that are not completely familiar with what is being proposed, and give him an opportunity to give us the fast sort of elevator speech on what exactly we've been doing for the last 2 years trying to get a firehouse on the west end of Destin.
Yes, and for 2 reasons I'd like you to come up here, sir. One is I want to remind everyone that we've had it's been 3 or 4 public discussions about this that have been noticed public discussions.
Going on 2 years.
Going on 2 years. So this is not something that just snuck up in the night of dark of the night. This is something that the fire district's proposed, and we've talked about it a couple of times, and now we're just moving down that process. So there'll be tonight and 3 more opportunities for the public weigh-in. So would you like to give us a briefing?
Correct. Mike Buckingham. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. We had come back, as the district had come back to this council quite some time ago when the drawings were being designed for Clement Taylor Park. At that time, we had noticed in the front corner, on the front left corner, where the existing bathrooms are, that it wasn't being used for the design of the park. It's a very, very small area, but we thought, wow, you know, we're looking for a substation, something to put 1 truck just to cover the west end. You know, we've been looking to purchase or whatever we could get in that area and have not found anything, so we approached y'all, and it appears that little section would work for us. We got with an engineer to try to design and come up with a quick plat that would show that this would fit on this little corner piece. With that said, it's worked. There has been a couple comments about, you know, what is the district going to do for the lease? Well, we're going to, hopefully you will lease it to us, but, you know, we're also have offered, there'll be a couple small trees that's going to have to be removed, but we are going to put minimum, and I say minimum, of 12-inch trees back. They're very big trees, you know, they're 35, 40 footers. And we have also offered to plant a couple also minimum 12-inch trees at the park itself, because a couple of your trees were going to have to be moved, and we offered to replace them, number one. Number two, we also offered to build, and it's part of the design that I had brought to you all in the past, that we are providing a first-class men's and women's bathroom for the park. It will be attached to the building, because obviously, you know, it's a leased piece of property, you own the lease. So we are going to provide some of the nicest bathrooms. Please keep in mind, if you look not just in the U.S., pretty much around the world, you're starting to see a lot more fire departments move closer to these parks for safety. You know, it's a big safety issue. We also said that we would not, and I repeat, we would not pull out of that station with the siren on. The last time the chief was here in front of y'all, he made that very clear that we will not do that. Now, once we get going down the road, that's pretty standard. You know, you got your lights and your siren on to let people know we're coming. Stay out of the way. We're coming. So we're excited about this, and we hope you all are.
You good? Okay, go ahead, sir. Continue.
No, I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Buckingham, could you describe some of the reasons why we got to this point with regards to the need? I know that we've been in discussions, and the chief has probably got the numbers off the top of his head, but over the last 2 years, it's the time it takes to get from Airport Road to West Destin, and with the increase of calls that is necessitating this movement, right?
Yeah, I can't even begin to tell you that the area on the west end of town is our #1 calls. I mean, we get more calls in that area. Please keep in mind, when we were at the original substation, when we decided to move to Airport Road, we didn't have all this growth on the west end. Everything was moving to the east end. Everything was out there in Crystal Beach, and it was just going crazy, so we thought we'd be centralized. Well, then it got so big out there, we had to build Station 10, because that area just got, got saturated. But now, the calls on the west end are much higher than the east end. Hard to believe, but the west end is heavy, very heavy. And we can't make it. The truth of it is, and I don't mind telling the truth, we have a hard time making it in a timely manner to save a life. In the summertime, the traffic's just so bad.
I just want to kind of remind, the reason we've been into this for 2 years is when we discovered while we were going through the grant process that was best for us to finish the grant.
Correct.
Before we address this, even though you guys brought this idea up while the grant process was in play.
Right.
We all agreed, I think,
Correct.
the council and in the district,
Exactly.
to wait until the the project itself would be finished and then bring this up. And that way it'd be
Right,
between
and when
us.
that was correct,
y'all.
and when that was all done, we sat back and waited till the grant was done. And once the grant was done, the plans were designed. That's when we went back to we requested to go back in front of the grant, the feds, and say, would you have a problem if we put this over in this corner? And they said, absolutely not. It would not affect the grant, would not affect anything. So it's a win-win.
Okay. You got a comment or a question, sir? Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay, since I'm one of the older people up here on the council, I can recall the days when the original station was there, and
correct,
we were all volunteer firemen, and that big horn would go off, and you never knew where it was. But I know the people that were part of that situation did the best they could to get there on time and try to take care of the person or area that was on fire. The things that bring up to me is it's the chicken and the egg. Public safety versus public benefit. Clement Taylor Park has been a lot of things. Originally it was a area that we had a schoolhouse / church on it. We took it as a park years later on just because it was there and blank and everything. That's the one thing. I don't believe in 1 minute that we're going to lose that much public benefit for a fire station. Why? As you said, things are coming back to the west end of the city. Comment was made that we don't control Crab Island, but I guarantee you that some of the vendors who rent out of Destin, if their boat catches on fire, we need to have somebody down at Crab Island. I mean, it's not just about that particular area. The thing that comes to mind most is, like I said, public safety versus public benefit. To me, it benefits the public. A mention was mentioned about a piece of land that is now coming up for sale from a previous council member who's both him and his wife passed away, and his heirs are trying to do the best they can and figure out what to do with it. It's slap dab in the middle of a residential area with several things. I mean, that would be a little bit more difficult to me, the way
Correct.
the entrance is, and especially right before that, where our park is, we have a little bit of a curve there. Where you're proposing that we put it, where the bathrooms are, it's more of a straightaway. The biggest thing that I see is, if I lived in that area, I'd want somebody there as soon as I can to put the fire out. Considering the the wood fires we've had in Walton County and in Santa Rosa County, we have some of our citizens or some of the people that work here in Destin have lost their homes in Walton County because they couldn't get there fast enough, even as many fire departments they did that serviced it. To me, it's safety. To me, it's a win-win. It's not the same as our previous right-of-way giveaway to me, because we're looking at the safety of the entire community.
Correct.
The other thing that brings to mind is your taxes. The fire district is a tax district. The only way that you guys can perform is our taxes. And with the price of land, are the people willing to go back and allow you to have a higher millage rate? We had that fight several years ago, as you recall.
Yes, we did.
And didn't work out very well. But, you know, it's something to me that needs to be done. I mean, I know there's going to be opposition. I know there's people that probably are going to rip me out about this, but I see safety. I see the protection of private property. I see a win-win situation. I do not see it. The same goes for the boat dock. If your personal boat dock that you live on Joe's Bayou or the bay or any of those areas gets on fire, I definitely would want that fireboat as quick as I could to get to where it was to save my dock or save any of my waterland or anything like that. So I have no objection to doing what we're asking tonight as far as allowing the attorneys to do what they need to do, and then let's come back to it. And I do recall we did have several meetings on this.
Well, I thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you, sir. All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, sir.
Hey, Mike.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry. Unlike Councilman Marler, if my house catches on fire, I do not want the fire department to show up.
Yes, sir.
I got good insurance.
Thank you, sir. I'll put that down.
That's on the public record.
Thank you.
Hold on, Mike. Mr. Mitchell, I think, wants to say something. Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you. Regarding public benefit, I'd asked this question before, and I think it's important for everybody to know this. Obviously, the park is something everybody wants, and we've been getting a lot of emails about this here lately. I asked this question before, and I just want to verify that. The footprint of the fire station in no way is going to hamper any of the facilities that were scheduled to be at the park. Another way of saying that is we're not taking a swing set away, a picnic table, or anything else. So that fire station there will not take away anything that's planned for that park.
That is correct. That is correct. The only thing it's going to provide is, like I said, it's going to be some very, very, very nice restrooms for the park.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Mike, if there is a fire at my house, I do want a fire truck.
Thank you, sir.
Same here. Okay, we got a motion. We have a second, and we've had a briefing. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call vote to approve the lease.
The terms of the lease, yes.
The terms of the
And
lease.
by the way, the ordinance that will be forthcoming has 2 public hearings. I wasn't sure if you were counting this meeting and the last one you said 4, but there will be 2 more after tonight.
All right. Okay.
Mayor,
So,
Mayor, excuse me.
go ahead.
I think part of the motion was to advertise it for a June 1st meeting, in which case we need to advertise by Friday to meet that. Can we have
The ordinance is prepared. I'll send it to
Is
you.
it prepared? Okay.
Good, Ray? All right. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler? Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
Vote is unanimous, so moved. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A, the original A, is regarding the internal audit of the City of Destin continuing services contracts. Back on January the 6th, 2020, Council had instructed myself to have each department head conduct a thorough self-audit of their continuing services contracts and to report back to Council. That report is before the Council tonight, and we have staff here, including Ms. Strickland, to help answer any questions that you may have regarding this report.
Does any comments or questions, the council, to ask any of our staff members or our finance department?
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. Obviously, since I asked for this audit, I certainly have something to say. So to speed up my comments and stay on point, I kind of prepared some remarks. Something to consider, for everyone to consider as you review this audit. Consider the fact that you should not just talk about money and the mistakes in the continuing service contracts, but also focus on a systematic breakdown within our city's operations that got us here and what additional actions we need to take moving forward. On November 18th, 2019, at a council meeting, I made the following statement. It should be noted the mistakes, be they honest or otherwise, issues concern raised herein are not directed toward the majority of our hardworking city employees. And moving forward, even though some may say this has given our city yet another black eye, our management team and the city council will be judged on how we move forward and correct the issues that have already been identified and additional mistakes, issues, and concerns discovering during the process. I also stated it's important for all of you to understand that the purpose of any investigation is to prove or disprove an allegation. It is just as important to prove a person is innocent as it is to prove them guilty. If you have done nothing wrong, then you have nothing to be worried about. It's that simple. Those two statements are just as valid today as they were on November the 18th. The audit required a lot of staff's time, and I want to thank them for all of their hard work. This audit is a great first step, but you will hear in my remarks why we have more work to do. I also want to acknowledge that accounting software upgrade will go a long way in resolving some of the errors identified, but this audit only focused on loss of money and fell short in many areas. I have spoken to the city manager and deputy city manager about several areas not covered in the audit, and I will be having a follow-up meeting with them to discuss those issues that still need attention. In addition, the city manager may have to address, as a result of the audit and additional reviews, performance issues of employees, spin-off investigations, and if necessary, report information received to the appropriate enforcement authorities for investigation. It seems to me that a non-expert self-assessment or audit that reveals this much is or should be the basis and grounds for a full professional, operational, and reconciliation audit by the State Auditor General. As an example of what this audit did not find or address, and the reason we have more work to do, can be illustrated with the following. Ray, I had sent you a picture. If you could put that up, I'd appreciate it. I sent a couple of pictures of a chart, and I'll just keep going. But basically, the photos in those charts I created was a breakdown of all of the categories in our fire, alarm, and continuous service contracts. It was broken into 9 categories, such as security and fire alarm monitoring, annual safety inspection, et cetera, and also includes all of our city properties covered in the contract. Since we are a municipality, many of our facilities are classified as a place of public assembly, which requires strict compliance with the National Fire Protection Association standards and guidelines. I reviewed all of the documents for the last 3 years and discovered the following. In regards to annual fire sprinkler inspections, they were not done at City Hall, at the library, and at the Desta Community Center. We were also charged for fire sprinkler inspection at City Hall Annex, which required a refund due to the fact that the annex does not have fire sprinklers. Regarding the annual fire alarm inspection, that wasn't done at City Hall Annex, library, public services, and community center. And in regards to the annual backflow inspection, that wasn't done at the library or the community center. The annual inspection areas that I just identified, which were not completed, means the city is potentially not in compliance with the National Fire Protection Association standards and guidelines, Chapter 9.9 and 9.11, and immediate action should be taken to remedy those infractions. Moving on. I now want to call your attention to the Government Services Group Accounting and Controllership report that we all received on the 13th, which was an excellent report. The first 8 pages of that report contain a total of 22 observations and recommendations. The last 4 pages of the report is a roadmap for implementation, which lists priority levels and proposed timelines. There are 3 priority levels. Those are high, medium, and low. All 3 priority levels have the same definition with the exception of the loss level. And it's defined as, they're described as a condition that may cause major disruptions or significant control deficiencies, which may result in, and in a high priority, result in major financial losses. In a medium priority, result in moderate losses, and in low priority, result in only negligible losses. Of the 22 items stated in that report, half of those items were high priority, which means we had the potential to lose major losses in money. So where do we go from here? As I mentioned earlier, I'll be meeting with the city manager to discuss other areas that were not covered in this audit and other areas that I didn't discuss tonight to identify what additional actions are required, again, if any. I want to thank the staff. I know they put a lot of work into this and I appreciate it. And I want to close by saying, as I discussed earlier this year regarding the pay-to-play certificate for excellence in the financial reporting for Government Finance Officers Association, I asked all of you, based on the results of this audit, what credibility does that pay-to-play certificate of excellence now have? That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Up next, Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. So I did have a few questions in going over the audit and looking at some of the findings. And one of my primary concerns was the fact that when we look at the number of errors, it's very significant to me that 14 vendors had errors of the 19. Of those 14, 12 of them, every single invoice had an error on it. And that's including, some of these numbers are just astronomical. It's almost like, how on earth does this happen? And I hate to say it, but rubber stamping. For example, S.H. Hayes, 76 errors on 76 invoices. I mean, that's ridiculous. D&D, 47 errors on 47 invoices. And so to me, this really speaks of complacency. I don't want to go so far as to maybe say negligence, but clearly, and not on current staff, because clearly all these occurred with former personnel. But when you start digging into this, because really my initial purpose was trying to see if there was a pattern. Is it one company? Is it, $100 off every bill? I was attempting to locate patterns, and I guess the good news is I couldn't find a pattern. Not that that means anything. There could be one, I just didn't see it. But it just looks like rubber stamping and not paying attention to the invoices. So it's really good to see what you have listed here as going to be the control action items and how you're going to be working to remedy the situation. I did see, and this to me was kind of where I started looking at different numbers and trying to calculate findings. And, even if it's $10 on a bill or $20 on a bill, all that adds up. And that's money that we're spending that we don't owe that could be going to a project or a need here. And I know we all know this, but, I'll just say that I'm very much looking forward to the new controls and the new operating procedures, because this is a great beginning, as Mr. Minchell said, but I'm worried that there might be other things that weren't quite right. But again, we do have some new staff in place, so I'm looking forward to things being remedied. Thank y'all for this report. I know it took a lot of time and effort to pull it together. It was very telling, and it gives us a path forward for sure. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ranswell. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the staff for the report. I know it was a lot of hours went into it. Yeah, I'm anxious to see, moving forward. I really get tired of having to deal with the crooks of the past. I know Steve says sins of the past, but that's putting it lightly. And I mean, just for my thought, I would personally like an outside audit to come in and just see where we can not, to make anybody look bad, just to see where we can improve or fix things. There's obviously just a small area. I found a lot of mistakes that's been made, to see where we can improve. And I don't know, maybe the staff that we have now will fix that for us or bring it to our attention that, look, this is what, we found and that's been done in the past, and this is what we're doing to correct it. But thanks a lot to the staff for the report.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, sir.
I'll just add to that. I mean, and it's obvious that there was some discrepancies in here, and I really want to thank Crystal Strickland for. I mean, she's really, I think, going to be a breath of fresh air for the city and for the finance department. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes. She's identified a lot of problems that we have, and she's come up with corrective actions that she's going to implement. And I think that she, along with the rest of the city staff, are going to focus on this now. And I really appreciate everything that Mr. Minchell's done. I know he's done an awful lot of work, and I think it sounds like he's going to continue to do some more investigative work. But I think that, we really need to make sure that we understand that Crystal Strickland is the new finance director, and I think that she's going to go a long way towards remedying any of these shortfalls that we have or any errors that we're having. And I think her, along with the rest of the city staff and all the new programs that they're going to start working under, are going to alleviate a lot of these problems in the future. So I look forward to working with her, and I'm just very hopeful for what's going to come with her leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Overdeer. The only thing I have to say about that is we've been working really hard to install a new system of government with InterGov. And I think this audit showed the past failures of the previous system of management that we were using, protocols and all that. But one thing I want to kind of clarify, Mr. Mentor, are you calling for a criminal investigation of people that no longer work here, or a criminal investigation of people that still work here?
Neither one.
Okay.
Okay. What I was referring to, and I honestly didn't want to go into now. First of all, I ditto on everything everybody said about our new finance director. And I said that when I gave my presentation about the things that report was excellent, and the system they're putting in, I think will serve us all well, and we're going to probably have virtually no errors. I'm very pleased with that. But there's other parts of this that are really not the council's job. It's the city manager's job, from performance standards of individuals. One individual in particular that did a lot of things he wasn't authorized to do. I've had probably 3 or 4 private conversations with the city manager. We still don't know what other sins of the past there are about that one particular individual. There's things that I say have to be reviewed, and as I said in the onset, just because somebody's investigated doesn't mean they've done anything wrong. But we haven't peeled the onion back on some of the older things. We don't know what other things we're going to find unless we follow up on some of the things that have not been done, separate and apart from the financial side of it.
Okay. Well,
does that make sense, Mayor?
yes, it does. And you answered. My first question was, did you feel like there's some criminal intent? So basically, most of all our former department heads have either been relieved of duty or resigned and are no longer here. We lost a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge when that took place. And so everybody that's sitting over there now, virtually everybody but 1 or 2 people, have been playing catch up ever since they got here, and we've thrown a lot at them in the time, and just for fun, we added a pandemic. So what I would like for all of us to do is begin to move in our thoughts and our attention on moving forward. We're instituting InterGov. We're going to get a briefing on that. In this briefing of this audit, it showed that the city manager has some very finite, definite things that he's going to do to prevent the errors and the mistakes of the past. So my only recommendation to everyone here is most all the bad apples gone, in your opinion, or in reality. And so let's, as mayor, I'm just asking that we really focus on, let's focus on what we can fix that's not fixed. As Mr. Menschel brought up, not everything's totally been investigated. But let's start focusing on what we can do better every single day, and let our staff spend more time on running this city on a daily basis, dealing with the challenges of the pandemic, and getting the InterGov system up online so it better serves all of us, council members, citizens as well. I just want to, just put a little levity to the discussion to bring a little encouragement to our staff, keep their morale up, recognizing everything that Mr. Menschel has asked for and instituted was fair, part of his responsibility as a council member. So Steve, that's, you've done, the things you've done have been good, and we've learned a lot from it. I would just hope that from this point forward, we could really focus on fixing the things that have been identified and press on with all the challenges that this city has. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I just don't know if Ms. Strickland wanted to add anything to the conversation.
Ms. Strickland, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for reviewing this internal audit. I do want to say just a couple things. First of all, when This internal audit started long before I arrived on the scene. And you know, there comes a pencils down moment where you just have to stop digging and move forward. So the staff, they did their first review of over 1,600 invoices, and I came along, and as I was reviewing the results, well, you wonder, yes, how can one vendor have 76 errors? Well, he's doing all of his invoices by hand while sitting in the truck. The accounting system that you had here up until this past October, which was the period that this audit went through, is 3 years, ending October 2019. That system did not account for unit prices. And this particular audit was simply a comparison of contract unit prices from when a procurement was done compared to the unit prices that were on the invoices. So this new accounting system that was drastically upgraded this past October, thanks to the Webb and Lance team, when all of the staff get thoroughly trained in how to use it, that just won't even be an issue anymore, because invoices coming in, if they're even 10 cents off of what the contract price is, they will automatically get rejected and go back to the vendors for them to recompute. So they just simply won't make them further down the line. Also, speaking of that pencils down moment, I reviewed through as much as I could, but as you know, I'm still here just part-time. Today I was able to get through another $24,000 of that $26,000 discrepancy. It turns out that one of those items was a project estimate that came to the board and was approved by the council members that were in place back in May of 2017. So technically, it wasn't really an overpayment because the board approved it at that time at a different price than was in the main contract. And then another $6,000 of that was a project that was simply a pass-through project, and it looks like they were missing a page from an invoice that was from the agency that actually paid for everything. They had separate pricing, and the pricing was just not included, but the city was fully reimbursed. So the city didn't lose any money. They weren't out of pocket for that. So I just wanted to say you have a really great IT team. And yes, Councilmember Menschel, that it's true that this audit did miss a lot of other aspects. But generally speaking, your existing staff member that are here today, you know, you're kind of preaching to the choir. They understand how important it is that if you ask a fire protection services to double check the sprinklers or your fire extinguishers in certain buildings, the people that you have in place now are the type that are going to insist on seeing proof that all of these things happen, and they're going to be checking the sign tags and other things like that. So if you just give it a little time and allow us to complete the training internally, you're going to see a lot of very significant improvements.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier, but you said it a lot better than me. Thank you. All right, on to the next item. Is there any other input from any staff members, Lance? Seeing none, go ahead.
All right, next item is an update on COVID-19 potential impacts on the city revenue and budget. Council had requested we come back with some estimates as far as how much we think we could be missing out on revenue-wise because of COVID-19. And I'll just summarize real quick, and we do have other staff here to help answer additional questions, but we believe that the number is going to fall between $1 million and $1.5 million. Shortfall basically out of taxes like the gas tax and the new half-cent sales tax and those programs. We believe that we implemented measures early enough on in COVID-19 that we hope to be able to cover these differences without dipping into reserve funds or something like that. And we froze some positions temporarily, and most of them remain frozen except those that are essential to operations. So we think we're going to be able to handle this without additional measures, but of course we do have the option of making it up out of reserves if we need to. So $1 million to $1.5 million, probably on the lower end of that is where it's going to come out, but I like to be conservative. So, and once again, Crystal's here. If you had additional questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Now that's $1.5 million estimate based on the present shortfalls. What happens if we don't open up for a few more weeks? We start getting into that aspect of it. Does that exponentially increase, or it just slowly keeps increasing? Could anyone answer that? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I took extremely conservative approach to these estimates because I wanted to present the worst case scenario. So this is your actual revenues that have come in so far to date. And then I estimated, when I was doing these projections, I didn't know that we would open up so soon. So I was very, very conservative. I assumed that we would be closed down for a few more months.
Any council members have any questions about that? Go ahead. Go ahead, Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item is a COVID-19 update on local business assistance. I believe Mr. Morgan had asked staff to come back with some ideas, including if we could cut fees or other ways we could help local businesses. We are working along the same lines as the county is working in Fort Walton, the city of Fort Walton Beach. We believe they have a program in place that offers the best case for us without getting staff directly involved in handing out grants to different businesses. And I'll let Mr. Warren elaborate on this project.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As noted in the agenda item, both Okaloosa County and our peer, Fort Walton Beach, has taken advantage of this program. It is a turnkey grant program that all the way from Escambia County to Santa Rosa County, I believe the cities of Milton, Pensacola, and Gulf Breeze is also taking part of it. The general structure of the grant program is fairly straightforward and is fairly turnkey, and it's also designed to be rapidly rolled out. In a nutshell, the max, according to the criteria that is being deployed by our respective partners at Okaloosa County and Fort Walton Beach, businesses must have 20 employees or less. Businesses must have been an active for-profit business in Okaloosa County, or if approved by Destin, it would be active businesses in the city limits of Destin. But they must be active as of January 1st, 2019. The max grant amount per business would be $2,500, and businesses must have been profitable prior to the pandemic. And also, businesses must show a reduction in sales revenue of 25% or greater due to COVID-19. Again, our peer cities and counties are all taking advantage of this opportunity, and we wanted to bring it forth to council as an opportunity to present to our businesses in Destin.
What is the grant amounts, the budget for those grants, that grant system? What did Fort Walton Beach do, and what did the county do?
Fort Walton Beach contributed $100,000, and in order to administer the program, the University of West Florida does add a 3% premium to that, and it's their oversight, so they contributed $103,000 total. I believe Okaloosa County contributed $110,000 plus or minus a few dollars.
All right. Any council members like to weigh in on this idea? Or, because I think what you're asking us for is to, if we want to do it, and then how much would we like to put into the program, correct?
Well, what we did is, again, we were asked to look at the BTRs and see if there was a way for us to refund that money, and that became a cumbersome process, and it averaged out to $6 to $15 per business in the city. And when we saw that our peers were doing this, just as soon as last week, we wanted to bring this forth for council's consideration. I did talk to SBDC, and they did recommend the lowest amount to go into the program was $50,000 plus a 3% fee, and they also do require us to stick to these strict credentials, or I'm sorry, strict criteria that the other counties and cities are doing in order to keep the criteria consistent and easy for them to roll out with.
Mr. Marler.
Webb, for the record, could you restate that we extended the time for the delivery vessels and stuff? I kind of forgot what day. I know we moved it to June, but I forgot what date it was.
I'm going by memory here, but I think it was June 1st.
Yeah,
Okay.
I see some heads going.
And we'll get this out to those people as soon as possible.
I believe, I'd have to go back in the agenda item, but I believe it's actually geared up to start up May 25th.
Okay.
So this is a very quick turnaround and could have some very quick relief to our area businesses.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you need a motion?
You want to do a motion, then we can have discussion before we vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, and then I've got some comments, but I move to authorize the city to partner with Okaloosa County and their Small Business COVID-19 Grant Program as administered by the Small Business Development Center at UWF in a total amount of $51,500 to include all grant funding and grant administration fees, and for the city manager to carry out all actions necessary to implement the program.
Okay, I got a motion. And I got a second, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I would ask for an amendment to that motion to make it $100,000 and I guess come out of our reserve funds.
You got a friendly amendment to the motion. Skip, are you good with that?
I'd agree with that.
Okay,
That'd
how
be
about
fine.
the second?
So,
Okay.
actually, I think if mine has to wind up there, it has to be 100, you have to be 103,000.
Correct.
There's got to be a 3% thing
Yes.
to the SBDC, so it'd be 103,000.
Yes. Grant programs, not everybody in our community, business community, got their PP&E or qualified for EIDL loans, especially seasonal sole proprietor pass-through entities. It's a battle we've been fighting in the fisheries during these first two rounds of the PPP and the EIDL loan. So this is a grant program that, some of our barbershops, even some fishermen, some small tourist-related businesses. $2,500 may not sound a lot to some folks, but it may pay somebody's rent for another month until tourism slowly comes back as Florida reopens. So whenever you have a set pot of money, having grants is the best way to do it. There's a $300 million emergency fishery project that was signed by the Commerce Secretary and sent out to the 5 state commissions. Florida's going to get $23 million of it, and that sounds like a lot of money, and the fishermen would benefit. But when you started adding up the 5,000 charter guys and all the commercial guys and the crabbers and the longline pelagics and all the fish houses, basically it was going to buy them a 6-pack of beer and a Chick-fil-A sandwich on Saturday. So that's what the FWC and the state is looking at, developing a grant program similar to what's already been talked about here. So having a grant program like this with a set pot of money and so people could get it, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's more substantial than if we save them $15 on their tax business receipt. So I'm in full support of this, and I hope the council is too. Mr. Morgan, go ahead.
I would like for staff to look into the way that our charter boat fishing companies are set up, and make sure that they'll qualify for this grant and that it won't be too cumbersome for them. And if they don't qualify, I would like us to come back and look at something to help fishermen specifically.
Ms. Morgan, any other comments? We have a motion, we have a second.
Mayor, I have one
Go
quick
ahead.
question. I mean, $100,000 is really cooking with gas now. So can someone explain to me exactly the process by which a grant will be approved and by whom and how?
So the SBDC from University of West Florida, they actually pick a panel. I believe there are bankers from across the county, and so there'll be respective ones from individual cities across the county, and they will take the grant applications and process them in an equitable manner, and then they will also allow for the city to make sure that all businesses are in good standing and are within the city limits before the grant will be dispersed.
Good with that? All right. Any further discussion? Skip, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Lance and Webb and I talked about this on Friday, and one thing I just want to stress, it's paramount that we do everything we can to get the word out about this grant. We can't just rely on Facebook or social media. I don't know if we put an ad in the paper, but obviously we have to make sure, do everything in our power to make sure everybody knows about it, so everybody gets a bite at the apple.
I would think that everyone that's got a BTR registered with the city of Destin ought to get a letter from the city informing about the grant application. Do you think that would be a reasonable thing to do?
We do
Just anything.
Can we do an email?
Yeah, anything just to ensure that people get the word.
Yeah, I think that would probably, at least we would cover the people that are registered business people in Destin. That would be sure. Email or letter, I guess. Email, of course, be cheaper, but we'll let Lance, I guess you and Webb can handle that.
Is there any parameter that requires that the actual business owner reside in Destin? You know, we have lots of businesses that are owned by out-of-state individuals who would love to have $2,500 to buttress their business interests, but really, you know, most of it's going to be flowing out of state. Do we have any requirements that the business owner or a portion of the entity's owners reside in Destin?
I am not aware of that requirement.
Would someone accept a friendly amendment to require that?
So are you wanting them for the owner to reside in Destin or for the business to be in Destin? Because as long as it's a Destin business that's going to benefit from this.
Yeah, the problem with that.
Well, and here's my scenario that I don't really want to have. My suggestion is I really don't want a family from Louisiana that has 2 or 3 short-term rentals or has some random company here that we're going to give them an extra $2,500 when we really need this money to stay here in Destin.
Yeah, but
Well, I think that would be part of the process that this board or the selection committee is going to evaluate them and evaluate their needs.
yeah, my concern is there's a lot of Destin businesses, the business people actually live in Niceville, or they live just in Kelly Plantation, or they live in Walton County.
Well,
but
and
they're still doing business here.
I'm open to saying they can reside in Okaloosa.
Yeah, there you go.
If we want to stick it to local folks, then let's do it with Okaloosa being the parameter that they have to live within. It's just, I just have a bad taste in my mouth giving $100,000 out and then without making sure that it's going to stay in this local community to help the real locals. Because we have, you know, the biggest complaints that most residents have is Destin's been sold out by out-of-town interests, and they still live, you know, they basically still have tons of business interests here, and they're going to want $2,500. I just don't think that they need to be first in line. We need people who are living here in Destin, and I'm comfortable with saying Okaloosa County too. So I'd prefer that we make sure that that happens in that way, and to guarantee it is to say that it shall be that way. So.
Okay, I could agree with that. I could change my motion to include that they have to reside in Okaloosa County.
If I may, the SBDC, they did make it clear that their guidelines on this program were going to be pretty strict. We can certainly request that, and we don't mind doing that. I just can't guarantee that they will accept that as part of the administered program.
Yeah, because we're not administering it. They are. That's part of the deal. And I think their intent for Fort Walton Beach and Okaloosa County is to support local business that's in the local area. So can we trust them to prioritize that, or do you?
As an attorney, no. That's why you put it last letter in the you require it.
If the SBDC doesn't agree with that, then I mean, if their parameter is already something different and they won't accept that, I mean, they'll still take our money and do with it what they want.
Yeah, and my concern is I do know people that do business in Destin that live in Miramar Beach or Sandestin, or they live in Fort Walton Beach. You know, they don't physically live in Destin city limits. Most of them, and some of them don't live in Okaloosa County, but they're still born and raised, local kids, local families. So I don't, you know, I didn't look at the briefing material close enough to see what all of their priorities are, Webb. So we're wrestling with that right now here at the dais.
I don't think there's anything that we've been given so far that tells us how the SBDC is going to define that, whether they have to live, or I think it just says that the business has to be it will have to be in Destin, but where the owners live, I don't think that's defined in there.
Well, do we make an amendment or no?
Well, he said he did accept sending that as, I didn't press the button. Webb is suggesting that we ask it as a request. I'm saying we need to put it in as a requirement. If they kick it back to us, well, then we can reassess it, and if I don't have the votes at that point, then we can send it the way that Webb wants. But it's $100,000, and I'm pretty serious about making sure it stays around here. And
Well, but the problem is, if we send this up and then they say, no, that's not acceptable, we're not going to have another city council meeting before this thing kicks off. It kicks off here in about a week for people to start applying for it.
Well, at some point, Skip, either you can accept my friendly amendment or reject it. It's not going to hurt my feelings one way if you rejected it.
No, I accept it. I'm just saying that if we do that, I just wouldn't want the SBDC to then kick that back and say, oh no, we can't do it that way. You're going to have to reformat this, or you're going to have to give us a different option. And if that's going to delay it to our next city council meeting, then that's that's going to do to our people. They're not going to be able to apply until we formalize this and give them the money. So
yeah, nobody gets nothing.
I don't mind doing the amendment and say that they have to be a resident of Okaloosa County, but I guess maybe there ought to be a stipulation there that says if that's acceptable to the SBDC.
I'm going to bring us around full circle. The initial discussion was about giving discounts on our BTRs by registered businesses in Destin. And that's how we were going to do it, where everybody got it, no matter where they lived. So to not complicate things more, I think these programs, the intent is for Destin businesses, for people that need it. I don't know if somebody's got STRs is going to apply for this $2,500 grant. I was thinking more, smaller businesses that Dale Beebe's daughter and stuff like that they haven't been able to cut hair for the last 60 days and that really need it. Yeah, like my barber. And so I think what we could do is say we want to participate in their program, but we want an emphasis put on people that live in Okaloosa County that apply. Maybe they can add that without changing their whole program, and then leave the final decision up to the administrators of the program.
Yeah, that's why I said we could put that caveat in there that we want them to be from Okaloosa County if that's acceptable to SBDC.
Go with that. It's your motion. Okay, so that's how it's going to read. Go ahead and restate your motion then, Skip, so we're clear on the public record.
Okay, so I moved to authorize the city to partner with Okaloosa County and their small business COVID-19 grant program is administered by the Small Business Development Center at UWF in the initial amount of $103,000 to include all grant funding and grant administration fees, and for the city manager to carry out all actions necessary to implement the program, and that we want to ask that the SBDC only give this money to owners of businesses that reside in Okaloosa County if that is acceptable to them.
Okay.
I concur.
Second's clear. Any further discussion? I think we found a happy place to land right there. We'll see how it all turns out.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Mayor, a question about the money to come from the reserve fund. Is it part of the motion?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I'm looking at city staff.
From the reserve fund.
Okay. For the public record, it's going to come from the reserve fund.
And the motion would also need to authorize staff to make the necessary budget amendment.
And as part of my motion, I authorize staff to make the necessary budget adjustments.
So noted. Is that okay with the second? That's okay with the second. Seeing no further discussion. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marlar?
Yes.
Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell? Okay, I read your lips, Steve. You said yes, right?
Yes.
Yes, we have it on the record. Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The next item, COVID-19 emergency measures update. Just want to throw in there that as essential personnel, the city staff, I believe, in my mind, have done an outstanding job of working through the last 9 weeks of something none of us expected to have to ever work through in our lives. Despite what some people think, I know that several businesses have been shut down and those folks have been charged to stay at home to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Our staff, with very, very few exceptions, have remained working their 40 hours plus more. Many of the staff members sitting in this room are not only working Monday through Fridays, but they're also working Saturdays and Sundays trying to keep up with what's going on in the world around us. As you know, our governor has adopted a methodology used in Washington, D.C. to release information late on Friday afternoon, so that places staff in a position where we need to work on Saturdays and Sundays.
And only if he's asked a question by the media.
And I'm not faulting him for that. I understand why he does that. But it does place our staff in a position to have to work through the weekends. And I just want to commend our staff for doing that while trying to keep the day-to-day operations up and running. We have not missed a beat with our critical functions within the city. Hardly any of our services have been impacted with the exception of some of our recreation programs and temporarily our library programs. The key programs that we provide to the public, although being given out in a different way now, are still being provided to the public, and we should all commend the staff for an amazing job. They're keeping up to date with not only that, but the list of priorities that this council established during their visioning session, giving us a list of projects that they wanted us to keep pushing forward on. So we're still pushing forward on those projects while all this is going on too. And in addition to that, we're working on the projects that we inherit from council during these meetings. So we're doing a lot with no more resources than we had, and I just wanted to commend the staff for hanging in there during this very strange time of our life. But with no further ado, I'll let Mr. Warren finish the update because we are moving closer and closer to being open 100%. We're not there yet, but we're moving closer and closer. So Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Lance. In a nutshell, the immediate actions that we will be taking is we will be incrementally opening City Hall on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That will allow us to bring back some staff that's been working remotely and also in some vulnerable populations to be back in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll also be opening up the community center to Henderson Beach and Joe's Bayou passes for Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Saturdays will only be open from 9 to 1. And then also we're happy to announce that our playgrounds are back open. And so our children are having fun out there, and we're happy to see that. And we are following closely Governor DeSantis's executive orders, and we are watching that so that we can safely and proactively open up our facilities and continue to provide our services to our residents. And also the library has been open now for 3 weeks, is that correct? And they are open on Mondays, all day Monday, half a day in the afternoons on Wednesdays, and then all day Friday. And also offering curbside services. So to our folks who are at home, go take advantage of those services at the library.
Next item up is 2020 hurricane season preparedness update. Just wanted to remind everyone that it's only 2 weeks away from June 1st and the official opening of our hurricane season. As we learned this week, we're already in hurricane season because we've had our first named storm already. So amidst everything else the residents and visitors to Destin are preparing for, I would ask that they look over their preparedness list for being prepared for a hurricane event. We hope that it never happens, but I encourage everyone to stock up on those supplies if they're able to, and to take whatever other precautionary measures they can. I can say that staff has been working over the last year to update our policies and get some manuals in place to help transfer some of the knowledge that we lost over the last couple of years and improve those processes so that we are much more prepared in the event that we have to deal with a hurricane or a tropical storm. Staff can answer any questions that council may have.
Carry on.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Matthew Pace. He's going to give a brief update on the InterGov or the eGov system that they've been implementing.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just want to go a little bit over our InterGov implementation process. I know everybody's anxious and interested in what's been going on. Since we've been doing our virtual meetings, things have started to progress again. We were able to get the departments back on track and start working in configuring the system and getting it up to speed. So our progress right now, you can see we're in the build and validate stage still. We're going to be doing that probably for the next few weeks as we move forward in getting our fees implemented and other things for each of the departments. That'll help build our workflow processes a little bit better. We're working with our consultant from InterGov, and he is actually working on some of our larger processes so we can get the idea of what we need to do to filter down to some of the smaller processes. So that's a huge help for us in this time. We also have scheduled some extra time that is of no charge to the city for some implementation consultancy with InterGov. They've offered that to us. We're continuing to work with the county on the GIS mapping system. We have come quite a far distance with this. This is one of the most important functions of InterGov. And with our GIS manager, he has been working diligently with the county staff to add in the additional layers we need to go ahead and automate some of our processes so they're not so intensive on the staff to go ahead and verify information. It automatically does it for us, depending on where a property is. To give you an example, this is 4200 Indian Bayou Trail. It's in a certain section of the city. It pops up on the map. It automatically will fill in that proper information within the back end of the system so we can have things automated and move things more rapidly through the program. And this is just some of the GIS features. We have composing and adding additional layers for geo-rules. Geo-rules are the rules in the system that automatically help populate that data. And then we also have been working on the web-based and enterprise map options. A lot of this will be changing over to the 2020 version after we go live. And this will allow both options to be running at the same time so staff and citizens can get used to both operations of that system. Some of the virtual solutions that we've been working on in response to COVID-19 are translating very well into InterGov. It's giving us an opportunity, and it's giving community development and code the opportunity to put some systems in place that mimic some of the procedures and issues that we are going to address when InterGov is in place. So a lot of these things that we're going to talk about here in a minute will be like an online virtual payment system. We've implemented that so we can actually send out, because we are not accepting people into the facility. We're trying to make it easier where they can pay an invoice or a payment portal online where they can actually make a payment and keep things rolling. So this is one of the integral parts of InterGov that we're trying to initiate now on the front end so that when we do go live in the 6 months in January, that we are ready and customers expect the same type of service. So that's just one aspect. The building division, their permit applications and plans are now being received via email. So that is another way that we're trying to alleviate an issue where we can't service people here in the office. Permits at cityofdestin.com will go to the entire permits department, and they have an internal workflow where they're allowed to work on that, address any issues that may arise. So it's one way of getting them virtual. The engineering division, they have several things that they've implemented in this time as well that prepares us for an InterGov implementation. The right-of-way construction permit applications, they can be received at permits@cityofdestin.com, and we have utility and right-of-way inspections not associated with building permits. They can be requested through that ROW permits@cityofdestin.com too. So we're trying to move everything to an online fashion where things can be addressed in an effective and efficient manner. The Planning Division also has made some changes. Applications and documentations, they're being sent via email to planning@cityofdestin, or they can do a digital submission as well. The pre-application and project meetings, and all persons requesting pre-application meetings, fill out and send the pre-application form to the City of Destin, to planning@cityofdestin, so the staff can go through that information, once again, to keep it in an electronic form, and the meetings are conducted via phone or web conference, and we've set that up as well. We've gotten quite a few web service conferencing systems that we can use, so we kind of open the door for everyone. If they don't have one version, we can offer them another solution. So we're trying to be proactive in working with everyone in the community. And changes are being made within the departments, helping transition into more efficient and paperless processes, what InterGov is really promoting in the end. So we're trying to do that now to prepare ourselves for that. And this is a silver lining to a bad situation. We've really been able to step up and take this to the next level. Virtual inspections also has kind of been a big thing for us as we transition in minor renovation and in-home occupied dwelling structures, air conditioning, water heaters, window changeouts. They're being conducted via FaceTime or another virtual means, so we're not having to get in anybody's personal space. We're just trying to stay distanced, really get ourselves and do our inspections that way. Exterior dwelling structures and unoccupied dwellings. New construction are performed outside utilizing the social distancing standards from the CDC. We mentioned last time about our naming contest, and I'll put my favorite picture up. This was a way for us to personalize our InterGov system, not keep it just plain old InterGov, which everyone uses and everyone doesn't really know too much about. We wanted to get this out. Catherine has been a big help in starting to get this information together for me. And we picked a winner for the steering committee, has picked one. It's going to be called Compass, and it's pretty indicative of our area here. It goes along with our city mantra and theme, and it just means community permitting and support system. And this was submitted by Michael Burgess, our public services director. So,
does he get a chicken dinner?
So I thank you for that. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. I think we're moving in a great direction. A lot of thanks goes to the Community Development Code Department, the IT staff that's been helping me and GIS, and we've really been pushing along even through some adverse times.
Thank you so much, Matt. And we got a couple more things on here. After you give us an update on item G, and we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll get into the Norrego point abatements portion of it. Okay, so go ahead on the next one, and then I'll declare a 5-minute break. We're close to 2 hours in.
Very good, thank you. As I hope you're aware, the dredge has made it back to Destin again, and we hopefully have less than 5 good weather days left of this project. If we could get 5 good days, we could get that thing done and get out of here. We have had a request from Taylor Engineering, who's the administrator of this project for us, to increase their contract by $13,000 to cover additional expenses incurred because of delays and other reasons. I can tell you that staff is currently working with the county in hopes that we can get some or all of this reimbursed, because the county is working with us on the rest of the cost associated with this project to get us reimbursed for most of it. So we are asking council's permission to amend the contract and increase the amount by $13,000. We have Kyle Bowman here to answer any questions specifically about this.
Thank you. So I had a couple questions about the days. I see that the contract actually talks about doing maximum of 50 shorebird surveys, and they requested to add 25 to make 75. And I had asked about the actual number of days that the dredge had been in place. And I saw there was an email this afternoon that came, and it gave the dates as 2/29 to 4/4, which is roughly, what, 35 days or something? And then now it's been back, but it hasn't really done anything, right, because of the weather, is my understanding. So I'm just wondering why they're needing additional payment for additional days when we're not even at the 50 days yet.
I cannot answer that question exactly. I'm not sure if the shorebird monitoring includes some pre-construction phase of the project and possibly post-construction as well. It's not clear in the task list. That's a possibility, but I'm just not sure.
And it talks about the different beach profile surveys that are going to be taken at the beginning of the project and then at the end of the project. Do we have those from the beginning of the project? And if so, could you send those to council for us to take a look? It's talking about the beach profile surveys that are done at each of the reference monuments, R17 to R30, and then there are a few other ones.
Yeah, we will get that from Taylor Engineering and send it on to council.
That'd be great. And then I don't see where it ever really delineates the beach fill areas. It talks about them. I feel like I've seen it on something, but I couldn't see it in this packet. Is that something that you can send the levels of the different areas? Is that part of the profile package?
Yeah, I believe the graphs you're talking about are in the actual joint permit that we have with the county, and that is what we submitted to FDEP, and the FDEP permitted us to fill those specific areas with. So I think that if we get the permit, we can send that on to council too, so you guys have the full picture there.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Braden.
Yeah, there was just too many questions for me, and Ms. Ramswell brought up some more for me to be able to support this tonight.
We have Matt Trammell appearing virtually too. He's the engineer of record for this project. He might be able to address some of these concerns.
Go ahead, Mr. Trammell.
Yes, I'm online. I can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so I guess to address some of Ms. Ramswell's comments, we are required to survey the beach for shorebirds at least a week prior to dredging commencement. So we started that well in advance. Once the dredge left, we're required by the permit to continue the shorebird monitoring. So even though there's no dredging occurring, we're still required to monitor those shorebirds. There was additional work in there. You can't just solely pay attention to the days. There's additional allowances for additional site visits for shorebird nesting, for weather delays, construction issues, problem resolution meetings. We have hit each one of those. As I'm sure your staff will attest, we have not been light on work following COVID, and especially with all of the weather delays that have come in and hit this project. So when the dredge pulled away, we had a number of shorebirds that came into the beach with the beaches closing. That presented a number of additional issues to us. While it was easier on the construction side, as far as the species monitoring, that became much more complicated and difficult. We're now into sea turtle nesting season, so we're having to take additional precautions. I had to get the permit modified, which we were not planning for, to include sea turtle monitoring in there as well, so additional coordination with the Okaloosa County. And I can continue if I need to, but there's been a tremendous amount of work, and we have exceeded that currently contracted amount.
Any questions for Mr. Trammell?
No, thank you. That helps significantly.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we modify the scope of services with Taylor Engineering.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. Any further discussion?
Council, just real quick,
Go
the
ahead.
recommended motion asks that you make that contingent on county approval. Would you like to make that contingent on
Yeah,
county
it's
approval?
contingent upon county approval.
All right, so we had amended. You got that, Ray, the amendment to it? Okay. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, I know, you're used to resting to the very
Yes.
end. Mr. Marlar? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
No.
Ayes have it, 6-1. So moved. All right, at this point, we are going to take a 5-minute recess. I wish we were 3/4 of the way through, but I'm afraid we're only about half. We have a lot of stuff left. Yeah, maybe we can. All right. As everybody slowly comes out of the room with their mouths full. Did you notice I'm wearing long pants? We learned this trick in 48 hours. You notice they always put those guys in little rooms with real cold, and then you let them sit in there. All right? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call our regular meeting, that's the City Council, May 18th, back to order. We are still in the item 4, the City Manager Report, and we're taking up item H, the Norrego Point abatements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council had directed city staff and city attorneys to draft a letter to FDEP asking for their official position on the issue of these abatements, and then hopefully to schedule a workshop inviting representatives from FDEP to discuss the matter in person. We have since sent a letter and received a reply, and so we are here to ask council for some guidance on how they would like us to proceed in the future. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, I got up first, Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, I think it's probably prudent at this point. I read the letter and understand their position. I think it's probably best for us to coordinate with DEP and see if they've got some time and some dates that will jive with some of the proposed dates that you guys might come up with. Bring us back, I think, probably some dates for some workshops in the future, and we can have a specific discussion about it in a workshop format where it's a single issue meeting. If the council, if it's all right if I throw it on the floor to just have them bring us back some dates after coordinating with DEP, and then we'll set a workshop at that point?
Early June, probably. I mean, let us get through Memorial Day weekend and the first week of June, maybe after that. Somewhere
sure, I mean, it's going to be subject to everybody's calendars,
sure.
But yeah. I'll make a motion that you go ahead and bring us back some dates and coordinate it with DEP so that they can be in attendance.
We got a motion, got a second. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. I sent an email to council and said, do not reply all. We don't want to violate sunshine, because I was absolutely incensed. If it had been a non-COVID time and they would have been open that next morning, I would have been in my car driving up there. This letter to me was so insulting and so upsetting that that's why I took the time to really lay out some points here. I'm all in favor of having a workshop and discussing this with the folks here as well as DEP and council, everybody together. However, the tone of this letter, do y'all think they're going to even be agreeable to coming and having a meeting with us? I mean, we could ask.
I think there was a certain tone to the letter, but I think we should try to bring them here so that you can at least have the opportunity to cross-examine them and ask them their position. And if they don't come, then they don't come. I think that'll give us a clear message, and then we as a council in the workshop can decide what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think the points that you brought up had merit. I see them pretty much the same way. At the same time, it is a $14 million project that really benefited our community, and you know, I'm kind of glad you couldn't go over there and hit them in the head with a rock, because you know, we do have a $10 million Leonard District Park funded by DP, $12 million Joe's Bayou project that isn't done yet, and a $2.2 million Florida Land Trust matching funds for the park. So, you know, they were a little obstinate in their attitude with their response, but at the same time, we got to try to find some fuzzy-wuzzy place to land, because we are dependent on some of the things that they got to support us and approve. That's really going to help the city overall. So I think that workshop format will allow us not only to get our point across to them, but it actually will give us all a chance to discuss what we think is best for all the abatements, whether we give up the furthest one to the end or we don't do it all to where we can all, see, that's a bad thing about the sunshine law. We can't discuss some of the issues that you brought up. So I look forward to a workshop to where we can have that discussion. Hopefully they'll be there to hear our discussion, and then we could deal with it like, we agree to disagree, this is what we'd like to see happen. You know, because in the end, we have to have these kind of partnerships, because a city of our size, to have the parks and some of the amenities we've been able to produce, this council's been able to put into the works and get done or almost get done, it's pretty remarkable for a city our size. And we couldn't have done it without the FDEP or the Florida Land Trust and some of these other programs. So, yeah, there's times, though, where you just got to stand your ground, and some of the points you brought up did that. I just think doing the workshop format, Mr. Destin, and giving ourselves an opportunity to not only for us all to decide what's going to be best for the abatement issue, but then let them see that process, and I think it'll make it a little bit easier for them to have a little more wiggle room, you know, and
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would love for them to come and have it like an open forum, and everybody can speak and talk and you know, this is what we see as an issue. How do you feel about that? Are you going to pay when everybody prop dredges the brand new $10 million point? I mean, these sorts of issues I look forward to discussing with them if they'll come here. But like I said, I felt like the entire tone of this was wrong and unprofessional from their perspective. Of course, I would always remain professional. I might be hot, but I'm not going to shy away from saying what's wrong or right for this city. So, yep.
So we got a motion, we got a second. So if everybody's ready, Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Mr. Destin.
Yes.
Mr. Marlar.
Yes.
Mr. Overdare.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes.
So you'll just survey monkey us some dates, Lance, on that? Great. All righty then. We had a couple little changes. Up next will be, do you want to do J, hold off on K, and then we'll do Mr. Morgan's two items? Or just go ahead and finish you out with J and K, and then we'll take up Mr. Morgan's two items that we brought under city manager report. Is that okay? You want to
No,
go
we
ahead?
can do J.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead and do J and K, and then Mr. Morgan will take up your issues. Go ahead.
All right. The next item is regarding ownership of the upland to the submerged land, subject to the Board of Trustees lease. So I'm not talking in code, we're talking about Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park and the boat slips that are immediately adjacent to that property. And this item came up in the past meeting, and we brought it back for some more direction from council in this meeting.
Al?
Yeah, specifically, Kim and I have written a letter that we propose to send to FDEP, and prior to sending it, we are just seeking council's guidance on whether you want us to send it as is or modify it in some way or direct us in some other manner.
I'll entertain a motion at this point.
Make a motion to send it as is.
Okay, I got a motion to send it in as is. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Got a second?
And then I have discussion.
Yeah, we'll have discussion. Yes, ma'am. So we have a motion, we have a second. So Ms. Ramswell, you're first up.
Thank you. There was one word, and I know it seems petty, but of course, with documents and anything official, we want to make sure that we're totally straightforward. And I'm trying to pull the actual letter up here. Oh, here it is. I have a printout. It's at the bottom of the first page where we talk about it could be critical. I'd like to switch that to is critical, if possible, and the rest of council is on board. The actual sentence is recognition of the city as the upland fee simple title owner to part of the property upland to the SLL could be critical. And I would prefer it to say is critical to the city as it moves forward in various endeavors.
I'm fine with that change. Kim's fine with that change. Councilmember Braden, if you'd like to make a friendly amendment to your motion to that effect, that's fine with us.
So moved.
A friendly amendment, is that okay with the second? Of course.
Oh, yes, that's fine. And then I did want to address a couple comments that were made in public comment, because there were some questions made. I think it was Mr. Klosterman, if I said that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. You had asked about, you know, is it that we want to just acquire the whole lease, and we are not listed as an upland owner of the property, and we are. We have 68 feet, and they have, I think, 280 something, and right now it lists the fleet as being the sole owner of all 350 feet. And we have federal grants and loans and all sorts on this property, and of course it's a city park, so we have to be able to show that, yes, these are, you know, part of the lease. We have this property. It can't look as though we have none of the upland property for legal documentation and for the Trust for Public Lands, who's actually financing, and we've got all sorts of covenants and restrictions that we have to abide to. So from a legal standpoint, we need to make sure that the documentation reflects us. This isn't about taking anything from them. You know, obviously there is a riparian lease in that they have. They have the use of 3 slips. I don't have any desire to try to take any of that from them, but we had to dig into some of these issues and make sure that we are rightfully listed as an upland property owner of that property. And there was a question that was brought, or a comment made by Ms. Wines that said that, you know, the 2 people have never been on the submerged land lease, and that's actually incorrect. Melvin was on the submerged land lease with the Destin fishing fleet from 93 to 98. He passed away in 95, and then when that lease was renewed in 98, he was still on it, but he never signed it because, of course, he was deceased. And then, of course, the next renewal, he wasn't on it because they discovered that he had passed away, and that's just how it ended up going. So this is something that has been sort of going on now for 2 decades, and we just have to make sure all the records and everything are in accordance, and that's why we're looking into doing this. So I appreciate y'all pulling this together, and I did want to just make that comment about, yes, originally there was the 2 entities on the submerged land lease.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marlar? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
So moved, unanimous. All right, announcements?
You want me to do announcements or move on to the Coleman Lake?
We'll do announcements last because you always do them last. Let's go ahead. We'll do the 2 that were under Mr. Morgan's name. Okay. We'll do the Coleman Lake first.
Sure. So maybe 6 months ago, we had the Coleman Lake homeowners come here and discuss about raising the dam to the original levels. We've since contracted with 2 or received quotes from 2 different companies that have been quite high, and I think the original builder of the dam, I would like us to use him and set the cap at, I don't know if we need to set a cap or receive a quote from Underground Inc., but I would move to direct the city to contract with Underground Inc. to get this done and bring us back a price to approve.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second? Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Braden. No? Yes.
Can we do that, or do we have to put it out for bid, or are they still one of our continuous contracts?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if Underground Inc. is still listed as one of our continuing services contractors. I know in the past they certainly were. But I'm also not sure of the amount, and that could factor into what procedures we need to follow as far as procurement. Can I look at that and bring it back at the next meeting?
If we could just get direction to look into that and bring it back, I think that by the next meeting we'll have those answers, and then we can negotiate if we can contact directly.
So, Mr. Morgan, can withdraw your motion?
Well, here's My suggestion, why don't we just approve both avenues right now, and you pursue the one that you're able to, so that we don't delay this further and have it brought back in another 2 weeks?
That's fine. I think that'll work. So.
Okay, so does Mr. Morgan need to amend his motion then to clarify?
So moved.
All right.
Second still stands.
Second still stands. Ray, you got that? Okay. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marlar?
Yes.
Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ranswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous, so moved.
And my second issue is, I was thinking about ways to avoid the process we just went through with Harbor Lane, and I was disappointed in a lot of different ways with the process. And the people who opposed the vacation all had wonderful points, and I supported them about vacating waterfront property, which we don't have enough of. And I remember when I was running for election in 2016, on the ballot was a question about vacating right-of-way in Crystal Beach, which was interesting that the voters decided the right-of-way vacations. And there is an ordinance that's in our packet that the city council passed that, and I believe it encompasses all of Crystal Beach, but in order to vacate right-of-way in Crystal Beach, it has to go to a referendum process where the voters vote on it. And so I would direct, and this is what I would like to see. So I would move to direct city staff to identify our most vulnerable waterfront right-of-ways, including but not limited to everyone on Joe's Bayou, and bring that back to us. I also direct our city attorneys to codify these right-of-ways via voter referendum process. I direct city attorneys to find out the latest date we need to submit a charter amendment to the ballot. And I direct city staff and attorneys to get this done before that date so we can get it on the November ballot.
Do you need a motion for that, or can you do it through consensus?
I think that was a motion.
Okay, was motion, all right, we got a motion then.
Help me understand exactly how we're doing this. Is it by ordinance? Could we pass an ordinance that when an application comes in of a waterfront right-of-way vacation, either full or partial, would then be sent to a referendum rather than causing us to have a referendum now? I mean, do we have to do that?
So that's also what I thought was, what the question was, can we do this through an ordinance where we require a voter referendum to vacate right-of-ways? That sounds good, except for the fact that you could get a council here in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years that just repeals the ordinance that requires a voter referendum. So do we incorporate that ordinance?
Is this changing the charter, though?
That's what my question is. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the rest of Harbor Lane is not vacated, and every other right-of-way that we have that is vulnerable and important to the citizens. I want to make sure that it is that essentially they'll never be vacated because the voters will never approve it. And so if we just pass an ordinance saying the voters have to approve it or deny it, then they can just change the ordinance. So what's the point of the charter referendum? So then we would have to do a charter amendment.
I got some people that want to talk, so
Sure.
let's go ahead and we got a motion and a second, right? Okay, all right. So now we'll move on into the discussion phase. I wasn't sure if you had seconded it quite yet, because you're...
I have a second for discussion anyway, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion and we have a second. So up first is Mr. Marlar.
Okay, I don't have an issue with that. However, how do we work this out? Now, normally we'd run referendums when we did an actual election, so it would save us money. In the case of the past one, because of the way it was done, it would have been a special election, special referendum, which is going to cost us a lot more money.
Well, we could tie it to the applicant of the referendum. If they want a special election, they can pay for it, the applicant for the vacation.
I mean, we'd have to do some legal review on that. not sure whether it is or not, but we can bring back that answer to you.
Okay.
Then, Rodney, you're up.
The only issue I have with it is the right-of-way that was just given away, or not given away, or whatever you want to call it, was not waterfront. It was upland from the waterfront, but, so I'm thinking that, all the right-of-way, because you can get around that.
But this is where I disagree with you on right-of-ways, and I respect your position, but when we vacated Pine Street right-of-way, you voted no, and I respect your position. I voted yes because Pine Street was originally intended to be a 4-lane road. Well, it's Pine Street right off of Calhoun. It doesn't need to be a 4-lane, so there wasn't much harm in it. And I do think there is times that I voted yes to vacate right-of-ways that were, I think, appropriate. So I don't think we need to do this process for every right-of-way in the city of Destin, but the Crystal Beach right-of-way process shows that there is a way we can do this legally that requires a vote. So whether the council supports it or not is irrelevant because the citizens are going to have to pass it. And I think waterfront vacations of right-of-way are so important that we need to have voter protect,
How about any right-of-way that dead ends into the water, like this one?
Yeah, and I think you just codify that language into the ordinance to, I think the attorneys can kind of decipher the spirit of what I'm trying to do.
Just to be clear, I understand Mr. Morgan's motion to mean, in addition to full vacation of right-of-way, also partial vacations of any right-of-way that dead end into the water.
And my question to that, and this is a question to you guys, is he brought up the point about doing it through ordinance because then the next city council could change it if they wanted to. So are we talking about changing the city charter to make this happen? Because that takes a voter referendum as well.
So I would like to, well, I think it would, to go ahead and and I don't know legally if this is possible, but what we did with the zoning in progress on the old movie theater property when we were worried we were getting apartments, but if we could do a zoning in progress on any right-of-way, waterfront right-of-way applications at the moment, and then pass an ordinance to stand in until the charter referendum passes. So we pass an ordinance now to basically send right-of-way vacations to the ballot, and then we have a charter amendment on the ballot in November to codify it.
Could I have y'all, Kim, you're the land use attorney, do you see a progression of how we ought to attempt this with the intent, with Mr. Morgan's intent, if there's a progress we could go through that would make it happen in the most efficient manner?
If we're doing a code amendment by ordinance, we could do a zoning in progress. If we were doing it right now by referendum, we couldn't do it that way. We'd have to wait till it went through. But if we did just a code change for now, then we could say any applications for a right-of-way vacate are subject to the ordinance that's currently in progress.
Are there any applications currently in?
For a right-of-way vacate? No. Are there? No.
Okay. Well, y'all are the attorneys. I mean, what's your advice for this? I mean, you know what we're trying to do, give the most protection possible to these waterfront right-of-ways.
You can do it either way. I mean, the easiest way to start it is to have an ordinance right now. You could put that into place, and then you could go and further do the
Take that same ordinance
Yeah.
and basically put it
Yep.
in the charter.
And see if the voters want to memorialize it into the charter.
I would like to do it by the November meeting if possible, if y'all could research that. And
We can do an ordinance in a matter of
You could do the
months,
ordinance
right?
now. It
Well,
would
yeah,
just-
but I would like to try to get it on the ballot for November, so we can put this stuff behind us.
But do you want the ordinance into the code first?
I think so.
Okay.
All right, so does that change your motion? Start over?
No, I think I probably got it, so.
Just to be clear, the motion, part of it now is to bring back that ordinance as soon as we can, right? Okay. And second's fine with that.
Yeah, I actually offer a friendly amendment well, to the degree that Chatham's accepting of it, can you guys look to see if we can do it in August? I mean, there's a primary election. You could do it sooner if we have, that's subject to the rules and statutes and the supervisor's ability to put it on. We wouldn't have to wait till November, because you were saying that time is of the essence in your mind to a degree.
No, yeah, I would just like to put it in the charter.
After an election.
Yeah.
So all right, thank you. So what I was saying for the public record then, doing it by ordinance now would satisfy Mr. Morgan's intent of what his motion is, and then give that protection until we could get it in front of a voters referendum in November for subsequent election cycles and whoever's running
And
the city.
I'm in no way criticizing any of the votes that were cast at the last meeting. I'm just trying to prevent this from happening again, because
Sure,
it was an
sure.
ugly, messy situation, and I think we might be able to avoid this.
All right, well, we got a motion now, right? With the second stands, so. we'll go
Excuse
ahead.
me, Mayor? I got bits and pieces. I don't know what the exact motion is.
Okay. Do
I
you
can
wanna
read
take-
what I can read what I have. If
Go ahead and read what you have.
Okay, from the beginning, direct city staff to identify the most memorable right-of-way.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable, see? To include but not limited to Joe's Bayou, right? Okay. To direct the city attorney to memorialize the language into an ordinance and to find out the deadline to submit the voter referendum language for a charter amendment to be included in the November ballot. And then you also mentioned doing it in August, or
August or November ballot.
possible?
Yeah, August or November ballot.
Okay. And then to implement a zoning in progress for any right-of-way applications until the ordinance passes on a referendum. Is that part of it?
Jim?
Yeah, we will put it on a future agenda, but we'll have it start now.
Okay. All right, so that's the motion. We've had discussion. I'm going to go ahead and take a vote, unless anybody else wants to weigh in. Skip, Ms. Mitchell, anything? No good? Go ahead.
I would ask if Sandy Trammell has anything she'd like to add. I've been kind of working with her on this, and she's certainly
Well-
had some experience up here, if that's suitable.
No, I mean, that's okay, but are you doing that so we can change the motion and fine tune it, or not?
No, just want to get her input.
Sure, go ahead,
She's-
Sandy.
She's sat here all night.
I would like to fine tune a little bit, and I would say look at all of the rights of way to the water, not just those on Joe's Bayou. We were looking today and we found 9. We thought there were only 6. So I think we need to look at protecting all of those. When you come back for the reading of the ordinance and you decide, whoops, this doesn't need protected, that doesn't need protected, the other doesn't need protected, that's a different story. But look at all of them for your ordinance now, and then when you come back for your hearings, then we can fine tune it. But I think this is going to protect what your vision has been, and we all voted for your vision because we all voted for you. And the vision has been to protect the right-of-way, the water access, for those of us that actually live 24/7 in Destin, as well as those that come to visit us. So this is one way to show that you're really doing that, and I think that's very, very important. Those of us that worked on the other issue that we had last month really support this. And it's not because of that issue, it's because we found out a lot of things that could be done or would be done or whatever in the future that we're not protecting ourselves. We, I mean the city, not me personally, but we, the city, are not protecting ourselves from that. I fully support this. I've talked to Chatham, and I know that these people that are sitting over here will probably tell you the same thing. Thank you, and we like the mustache.
Oh, thank you very much. My wife doesn't, but that's a battle I'm going to have to fight later.
So there you go.
Yeah, but in the motion, it is including but not limited to the right-of-ways, waterfront right-of-ways on Joe's Bayou.
So it's in there already. Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marlar? Yes. Mr. Oberdehr?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
So moved, unanimous.
Just one quick announcement. Mr. Mayor and Council. The month of June has historically been a very heavy workshop month, and it looks like this June is going to be no different than any of the past few, because amongst other things that we're trying to handle right now, we are getting ready to open up the budget process for staff input, which means that we're going to need to schedule a council budget workshop as probably early to mid-June, so that y'all will get a shot at fine-tuning how we spend our money for fiscal 2021. Ms. Strickland will be releasing a calendar of events within probably the next week, but we will be reaching out to you for a date for a workshop on budget 2021 coming up shortly.
All righty then. Mr. Bowman.
Council, we have a public hearing, item 5A. This is Jenkins Engineering on behalf of HB 98 LLC, requesting approval of a major development order for a 117-room hotel. The proposed project is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Commons Drive and Henderson Beach Road, parcel ID 002S22000001-A13J, within the Crystal Beach Multimodal District. Subject property consists of 2.56 acres, more or less. This time, if I could get all members of staff, the applicant, and any member of the public that wishes to be sworn in to stand up and please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth? Thank you very much. Council, if you have any ex parte communications to disclose, please do so at this time. Seeing none, Mayor, I ask that you turn it over to Ms. Kopp.
I will obey.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to turn this over to Ms. Witt.
Thank you. The proposed major development order application before you is for a 117-room hotel, True Hilton, located at the southeast corner of Commons and Henderson Beach Road. The future land use designation and zoning district for this parcel is Gulf Resort Mixed Use. The proposed height is 40 feet and 4 stories with a floor area ratio of 0.55. There is one proposed driveway located onto Henderson Beach Road. A 10-foot sidewalk will be provided along the entire frontage of Commons Drive, and an 8-foot sidewalk will be provided from Commons Drive to Highway 98 along Henderson Beach Road. The proposal includes 128 parking spaces and meets the minimum landscaping and tree requirements. Since the subject parcel is within the Destin city limits and both Commons Drive and Henderson Beach Road are county rights-of-way, this project was also reviewed by the Okaloosa County Public Works Department per the interlocal agreement. As a part of Okaloosa County's approval, the applicant will be further improving Henderson Beach Road by adding a center turn lane and extending the northbound right turn lane onto Commons. The airport is not affected by this project. However, if approved, any elevating machinery such as cranes will be required to register with the city and airport at the time of permitting. The total estimated impact fees to be collected for this project is $144,495. The proposed major development order meets all city requirements at this time and has been approved by the Technical Review Committee. The project engineer, Scott Jenkins, as well as Okaloosa County's engineer, Scott Bitterman, are both in attendance tonight to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, and also I would like to enter into evidence as City's Exhibit A, the agenda item, staff report, and all of the attachments, and then turn it over to the applicant. I believe Scott Jenkins is here.
I got it. All right. Thank you for hearing this project tonight. I'm Scott Jenkins with Jenkins Engineering. I think staff did a great job of explaining the project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys may have at this time. Nothing. Thank you.
I have a question for staff. So it's 117 rooms and how many parking spaces?
128?
So it's assumed that only one parking space per room and then a handful of employees, and that's all they've got per code?
Yes, correct. It's consistent with the Martin model standards.
You mean those standards where we assume that people are going to come by bike?
Those are the standards we have, yes.
Right. Okay.
Can't.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the major development.
Rodney, if you could, just real quick, we need to open up to public comment and public testimony first.
Hold that thought. And you can keep your little thing up so I don't forget you. All right, this is a public hearing, and at this point, if there's no more presenters, I open this up for public discussion. Is there anybody in the room that would like to come up and make comments on this proposed project? Is there anyone, Matt, queued up? I didn't forget.
No.
How about you, Ray? Any written emails? No questions. All right, seeing no public input, I'm going to close this portion of the hearing, and Mr. Braden, you're on cue.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the major development identified as True Hilton.
I have a motion.
Second.
I got a couple of seconds. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Overdeer, don't want to ignore you guys? Nope. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Mr. Morgan?
No.
Mr. Destin?
No.
Mr. Marler? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
Ayes have it, so moved. Consent agenda, item number 6.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
You got a motion, got a second? Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler?
Yes.
It's getting late. Mr. Overdeer? Yes?
Yes.
Got
Yes.
it. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
All righty. Then we will move right on. Item 7A, Mr. What? No, we did, consent agenda is, okay, all right. Mr. Braden, you have the floor.
Good night, Mayor. Thank you.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up because I may have missed it, but Ms. Trammell, when she was up earlier, had asked about the status of the $25,000 for the Harbor Lane project. What is the status of that? Did y'all say it and I just missed it?
Yeah, true, Lord.
I think we were directed to take that to the Parks and Recreation Committee, and I believe they meet next Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I missed it. And I believe we're going to start back up the Beach Advisory Committee, next week, Ms. Firth? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
You're okay. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. 10 o'clock, Tuesday, 26th, I think.
Perfect. And I know I've gotten several complaints about some really wild activities on Crab Island, like people filming music videos with very, very inappropriate nudity and stuff going on. Like somebody sent me one of these videos. I could not believe that was happening right there in the middle of Crab Island on Mother's Day. Wow, holy moly. So anyway, that's going to be one of the things that I bring forward to discuss at the Beach Advisory Committee meeting. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Mr. Mitchell?
Okay, I have a bunch Let's start first. In March of this year, I had an email and telephone conversations with our city attorney and land use attorney in reference to the need to update our charter in relation to Article 3 civil emergencies. And the city attorney responded in part and stated, I do agree with Councilmember Menschel that there is a potential gap in our city's code. Upon further review of the city's code, I've identified various other areas that have potential gaps, and my intention is to bring those forward in future council meetings. My request tonight identifies another gap in our charter that I identified that needs to be reviewed by our attorneys. Based on that, I'd like to make the following motion. I move to task our attorneys to conduct the necessary legal review of the City of Destin Code of Ordinances, Part 1 Charter, Section 309, or any other applicable sections to identify the language needed and process required on how to remove a city council member or mayor for violations listed in Section 309.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Leads us to discussion, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Attorneys, is any of this potentially preempted by the state?
Possibly. There's a couple of recall procedures described in the state statutes, so we'd have to look at those and just determine whether or not this is possible and bring that back to y'all.
Would it be necessary for an Attorney General's opinion to the effect of, on the question of preemption?
Probably, depending on the clearness of the statute. It'd be tough to advise you guys.
And I'm digging
move
too
forward.
far into you guys doing your own job and trying to figure it out, but that's just, at first blush, trying to figure out exactly where this may go. Okay, I'll yield.
Ms. Marler.
Hey, refresh my memory a little bit, because I don't remember if Mr. Mitchell was on council or not, but we just did a charter review about a year or so ago, and we were going to do a charter review, and it actually never happened because we didn't need to do one. So I'm just trying to figure out where we're going. If we need to do a complete charter review again, then yeah, I'd rather do it that way instead of just a particular section.
I think we decided we needed one, but there was a problem in trying to appoint people and trying to actually get the process going and started, and I think we decided it was more trouble than it was worth at the time. And I hate to say that, but I think that's ultimately what ended up happening.
I don't know where to go with this other than take a vote. Ms. Kopp?
Yes? I think, why don't you just let the motion stand till have us look into it and come back to you guys with our thoughts and opinions.
That sounds a lot less thoughtfulness on our part.
You know, it's the best way.
That's right. You do bill by the hour, correct?
Well, if you have a better idea, then we're all for it.
No, I don't. I'm going to go ahead and call this thing to a vote if we don't have any further discussion. All right?
Real quick, though, I've read our charter, and, you know, it talks about certain duties, and if you violate them, whatever, but it doesn't provide for any recourse.
Yeah,
the way it's kind of like, yeah, okay, so you need to do A, B, and C as the mayor, or as a city councilman, or what?
The way I take Councilmember Minshall's...
It's toothless. So,
sorry. Yeah, the way I understand Councilmember Minshall's motion is that's what he's asking, if we can provide that teeth to, at least through the ordinance process, to those charter provisions. Is that right, Councilmember Minshall? That's what you're asking us to do?
That is exactly right. It speaks to his infractions that any one of us could be removed for, but it doesn't speak on how to do it. That's all we're asking for, is just to review that, no more, no less.
Can you remove me?
That depends on you in November.
I don't think they can do it.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Violation of mustache rules or something? Yeah.
Hey, whatever you can get.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Is it my understanding that no matter what teeth we put in to the charter, if something is violated to the extent that it needs to go to the governor's office, and the governor is the one that would remove say myself.
Yeah, there is a state statute that allows the governor to remove elected officials in certain scenarios. For instance, if the elected official has committed a felony, some things of that degree. I don't remember the exact language off the top of my head.
But nothing we're talking about here tonight is something that this council, we're going to try to change something so this council can make a motion and pass something unanimous to remove a council member or a mayor.
Yeah, my understanding of the motion is simply to do the research and bring back the options to y'all so that you can decide what you want. And right now, I don't think that Kim and I know exactly how far you can take this. So I think that's the research that we need to conduct and possibly even ask the AG to determine what you can and cannot do.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
As I said before, as I said when I started, when Kyle and I spoke in March and we were talking about Article 3, okay, civil emergencies, as I guess this is a byproduct of the pandemic. Looking at this thing, there's a lot of verbiage in here that's missing, okay? All this is, and I'm going to come in in another 2 meetings, I'm going to come back with more. I've just sat down and looked at some things where there are holes and just simply asking for some legal opinion. We're not wanting to take action on anything other than take a look at it and come back and tell us what we want. That's all this is.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Let's go ahead and take it to a vote. Any further comments? Seeing none, Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Mr. Destin.
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Overdeer.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell.
Yes.
Mr. Braid.
Yes.
So moved. Ayes have it.
Okay.
Number 2, pause.
Okay, yeah, I've got several. Okay, this past weekend or last weekend, week ago, there was an issue that came up with pause that I passed on to the city manager and whatnot. And in dealing with that, I guess the information came out that the city manager's been talking about the potential of us taking over the collection of animals for pause. We're not going to do away with pause, and I kind of defer to Lance for him to speak to that. This is not going to be a motion tonight. It was just more for information purposes. But Lance's intention was to let our code compliance people be the individuals that to collect the animals from our city residents, which they'd get faster responses, and then we would in turn turn the thing over to pause. But I'd like to defer to Lance to follow up on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Yes, Joey and I have discussed the potential opportunity of bringing some of this in-house, and honestly, it's because we already have an officer that works for us that's certified in this area and could transition into doing this for us very quickly, I mean, and at a very low cost. So we would still not be housing animals on a long-term basis within the city. PAWS would still need to do that for us, but it could improve our efficiency and response times if we did bring it in-house.
Plus, I think, Will Ellison probably has already had rabies once or twice, and really, we could just throw him to wrangling all of the raccoons anyway. It's no big deal.
I second that. What?
And
Will's going to be a dog catcher?
The other key, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'll let Joey speak to his crew and his plan for if we decided to implement this. We're in the planning stages.
Another big thing is it would save us some money, okay? A couple of other quick things that I had that's not on there. Karen, I think you'll be happy to hear this. The city manager and deputy city manager and I were talking on Friday, and we're talking about that infamous location of Commons and Henderson Beach and the need for a light. And you all got an email from Ray late this afternoon. And just for information purposes, I reached out to Gulf Power to ascertain how much it would cost us, the city, to install a street light on the existing light pole at the intersection of Commons and Henderson Beach. One light that they have quoted for us would light up that intersection enough to make a major safety improvement. And that the upfront cost, according to Gulf Power, it would cost us $2,319.49 to install it. And then monthly, it would be $10.32 for that light. And I know it's not on the agenda tonight. Maybe we could talk about it next month and next meeting. But based on all of the issues at that dark intersection, I think it would be money well spent. and I bring it to y'all for consideration.
I agree with you, Mr. Mitchell.
You want to discuss that now, Steve?
I don't know, I don't know, I guess I defer to y'all. How do you want to handle it? Put it on the agenda for next meeting so we could vote on it?
Ms. Ramsell?
We could do, if we have a super majority, we could go ahead and walk it on and vote on it tonight if council's in favor of that.
Ms. Ramsell's correct, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, right? Do you guys want to have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, go ahead, make the motion.
I make the motion that we install, based on the information we got today in the email from Gulf Power, that we pay up the upfront cost of $2,319.49, and then based on that, the monthly charge would be $10.32 to install a light at the intersection of Commons Drive and Henderson Beach Road.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second it, Mayor, and I have a caveat to that.
Okay, and we have a second. What is that, Mr. Marler?
We need to coordinate with the county on when they're going to put the light in. I noticed they're working on that intersection, so.
Yeah, I think they were hanging the cross beams already.
Can you make them hush?
Guys, could y'all keep it down over there? We're getting cross feedback here, so.
That's the only thing. I may have staff coordinate with, the county on what they're.
Okay, Ms. Marler just added a friendly amendment to your motion, Steve, just to say that we are to coordinate that installation with the county.
That'd be fine, but sooner than later if possible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have a friendly amendment to the motion. The second, still good with it? Well, you made the amendment. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Mahler? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous, so moved.
My last item, sir, I've talked about this quite a few times about James Lee Park, and again, it's not ours, I realize that, and I know staff's reached out to the county, but those fences at James Lee Park are in deplorable condition, and now that we have people there, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I would just ask the city manager to maybe reach out to County Commissioner Wines and see if he could aid us in any way to get some action taken on that.
I'd be happy to do that.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Mayor, I actually had a pause question, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Joey, are we talking about essentially code enforcement taking over the collection of animals until PAWS can assume control? Is that?
What I'm looking into is we would take over the animal control portion when we would transport the animals to PAWS.
So where would they be kept until they can be transported to PAWS?
If we had an animal complaint, we would process it and transport them right then to PAWS. We would have holding facilities here. We can either build them or I even have it budgeted out how much it'll cost to have the kennels here. We'd also have 2 kennels on the outside of, but this is what I'm exploring, 2 kennels put on the outside of public services over there where the public can drop off animals. We'd have to have them separated and then we can transport them from there.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is time and expense and personnel management. So do we now have enough code enforcement officers and we're able to respond to everything that we can spare someone to have this additional task?
We would be able to manage it. When you look at the calls for service that I pulled from the sheriff's office, they had 157 calls for animal incidences. 25 of them were referred to PAWS. Out of that 25, how many did they respond?
Okay.
So I think we can manage this.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Overdeer, you're up.
Yeah, just a little add on to that, SBDC, the grants, the county has already put out a press release. They're going to start taking applications on the 26th of May, and it will run through the 29th of May, so it's a pretty short window there. And I'm sure that Catherine Carr, our PIO, is going to probably put out a press release at the same time because they've already identified that the counties put their money in, Fort Walton Beach has put their money in, so if Catherine will kind of put that out as well, so that when the press release comes out in the newspaper, then it's for the county and Fort Walton and Destin. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Marlin? Mr. Destin?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Morgan's already gone over some of his stuff. Do you have anything else to add?
One thing, Ray, for the next meeting, can you put on my agenda repeal of the rooster ban, please? Thank you. It's a long story, but it involves roosters.
We're really degrading our meeting here rapidly. Is that all, sir?
It's all, and it's very real.
Along with the mustache.
Mayor?
It's also real.
Sir?
As long as we're doing that, I didn't want to interrupt earlier tonight, but I think we're all in the wrong line of work. We need to go into bird watching.
Yeah. Either that or census taking, because it pays pretty good too. All right. Now on to our city attorneys.
I put a copy of the mediated settlement agreement between the city and Point Mezzanine into the agenda packet because you approved it last meeting, but they did not have the depiction that's attached as Exhibit A ready at that time, so it's attached now. And I added some language to paragraph 1 on page 1, just stating that approval of this agreement doesn't bind you to any future decision on the application.
Okay, is that all you got tonight? Thank you. Kyle? Whoop.
Nope, we do have one more. We have the resolution on short-term rentals that we talked about earlier in the meeting, so I don't know if we need to talk about it again, but if you want to approve it, please do so.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, sir.
The only thing I would say, the resolution, I mean, it's a resolution in support of the county, which the county has already sent the letter to the governor and DBPR, but it's to get them to, allow us to start doing short-term rentals again. And I think that's the whole purpose of the resolution, but there's a whole lot of other stuff in here, and there's already been some public comment about this, but there's a whole lot of other stuff in there talking about home rule and us wanting home rule and that we support home rule. And it even goes a little bit farther, saying things like, we want unlimited home rule authority. I just don't think that this resolution is the place for any of that. Those are legislative issues that the legislature comes up with every year, and they always throw those out there. They have a bill from the House and a bill from the Senate. And we go there with, I've gone to Tallahassee, and I think some of our other council members have as well, with the Florida League of Cities and Florida League of Mayors, and I go down there with the chamber, over there with the Chamber of Commerce to discuss issues like that when they come up. And I think that's the appropriate time to start, pushing home rule. I don't think that's what needs to be in this resolution. So, I mean, I would move that we pass this resolution, but that we take all that stuff about the home rule out.
You want to do that in motion form? I guess you just did. Is that a motion?
I can do that.
Okay.
That's a motion.
That's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. We'll have discussion real quick. Ms. Kopp, I saw you hesitate. You were going to want to say something, so we'll start with you.
I mean, it's in the discretion of the city council whether that's in or out. It's we had passed 2 previous resolutions that this is consistent with, basically just telling the state that we want to regulate our own short-term rentals within our jurisdiction, and this is consistent with that. Also, you and I had that discussion about including it so that it would be addressed both short-term during COVID and long-term. So I don't know if you wanted to add to it, but like I said, it's in your discretion.
Well, my point is that this is going to the governor and to DBPR. And these are not the people that are always trying to infringe upon our home rule rights when it comes to short-term rentals. It's the legislators, it's the representatives and the senators. So putting it in this resolution, to me, I think it's kind of a moot point. And like I said, I think we just ought to keep it simple. Just talk about opening up the short-term rentals and not talk about trying to, push for home rule.
Thanks, Skip.
That would be then another change to the resolution, because it's not just going to the governor. It's going, as it's currently written, if you don't change it, it's going to the Florida League of City, the surrounding counties, municipalities within the surrounding counties, and our lobbyists at the Florida League of Cities.
Yeah, I just think that this is only about getting short-term rentals back up and running, and it's not about home rule right now. We got other venues and other opportunities to do that. I just don't think this is the time or the place to do that.
All right, Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, I think if the mayor's letter to the governor is any indication, I don't think this resolution is going to be read by him. You know, and that's honestly, this has got to be the dumbest response I've ever seen to this pandemic, which is the only pandemic I've ever seen, but it is a terrible response. You know, the governor controls restaurants and he controls retail and he controls other aspects of our economy, but the cities control the beaches and the counties control their beaches. So from Panacea to Pensacola, they're all regulated differently. And then now it's, well, the cities don't regulate our short-term rentals, it's the counties, but all the counties are going to be different. And the approach that would make too much sense would be a regional approach to this, which the Panhandle hasn't been affected by this nearly as badly as other parts of the state. So here are the short-term rental restrictions for the entire Panhandle of Florida. If you want to opt out, you can opt out. But in times like this, you look for higher leadership, and we certainly haven't found it here with short-term rentals and our beaches. And it is very disappointing because, you know, there are a lot of people that Friday afternoon we found out the process. You know, we went from 25% to 50% in our restaurants on Friday. Well, that's great, but we make our schedules on Wednesdays. You know, and so just a little, if telegraphing from the state would be nice. And I'm just screaming into the void here because nobody in Tallahassee is listening to me. But what's ironic about this whole thing is we know damn well come next legislative session, and Skip says, you know, this isn't the governor who infringes on our home rule that much, except when he signs the bills into law. He's infringing on our home rule. The bills that Preble is constantly fighting in Tallahassee with Florida League of Cities. And, you know, these are, you know damn well next legislative session there will be bills upon bills trying to preempt the city's ability to legislate short-term rentals. But when a global pandemic comes that nobody knows what to do, y'all figure it out. And he leaves it up to the cities. And it's disappointing because we know that threats to home rule are going to continue to come next legislative session. But, you know, the buck stops with us. We can't pass it off to anyone else. And it's frustrating that we're dealing with this and the governor hasn't taken action.
Yeah, and I'm a big home rule proponent. I mean, I know that's not any surprise to anybody. I've been frustrated by this process just like everybody else. I have no qualms with the home rule language that's in there. Brother Ken and I disagree. I do find it ironic that, you know, this is the state which, under certain circumstances, you know, short-term rentals want to have us preempted so we can't touch occupancy and some of the things they're worried about that may affect their operations and their profit margins. But we need to deal with them because there's been cramming. There's legitimate health, safety, and welfare issues that we've been trying to deal with. But then when the state that they were previously desiring to preempt us goes and shuts them down, then they come screaming to us to reopen them. And I'll tell you, we never probably would have made a distinction between you and, I would say short-term rentals and hotels because they're the same. They are the same. So I do find it quite ironic that we're in this weird situation where we've swapped bed mates about 3 or 4 different times through this process. But I'm going to stick with my gut. I don't mind home rule. I think best decisions are usually made by the boots on the ground who know exactly what's happening, and that's local control. So, you know, I may lose the vote, but I like the resolution as is, but I also agree that it's a bit ironic. We know that nobody's going to read the resolution, probably at the state level anyways.
No, so this might be what you call an exercise in futility then. But Skip's concerns, and the ones that we got emails are that, you know, the people in that industry have taken it squarely in the chops from the governor and the state, who you appropriately point out was supposed to be their savior in one issue, and it maybe was, but on this issue right here, they're punching them in the eye. At the same time, I understand their concerns. You know, 4 votes could dictate that they could only rent 7 days a week, and that doesn't work for anybody because then half the time their units aren't rented. So there's concerns on both sides of it. I think the intent of this particular resolution that our attorneys wrote up, per my discussion with Ms. Kopp and our attorneys, is that the intent is we would like to have a little more control on this broader base issue of if we open or close them. Yeah, so, you know, that's just my 2 cents. If we got to the point where the council wanted to dictate to that industry further, well, then they're just going to have, you know, that's just a fight for another day for everybody concerned. Right now, we're dealing with a pandemic and a governor who has basically turned a deaf ear to the Panhandle in general, not just the city of Destin. We can pass this motion or we don't pass the motion. The key is now we're all sitting with bated breath, pun intended, waiting to see if the governor's going to allow our places to open up before Memorial Day weekend. And every industry and 33,000 people in this county are just hanging on a thread, waiting for his one decision, which he really didn't give the decision to the counties because we sent him a safety plan on Saturday and we still haven't heard anything. So your points, Mr. Morgan, about the ironic aspect of this are well taken.
And I'm also a little hesitant about the state approving anything right now because I've still only had one employee receive unemployment funds 9 weeks later. So,
all right, well, seeing how this is not a beat up Governor DeSantis motion here, even though many of us would like to, we'll go ahead and take this thing to a vote.
So the vote as it is, the motion is, Mr.
To
Overdeer,
remove
the initial language about home rule.
Home rule. So that's the vote.
So that's what we're voting on.
Yes. We had a motion and a second, and that's to send this, basically it will send the, another change will be made to this particular resolution, just stating that we would like to have control over opening and closing of STRs in an emergency situation. We'd like more control. The motion is in that resolution, as our attorneys have written it, was talking about home rule across the board, basically. And what Mr. Overdeer said is he would like that aspect of it removed and just the resolution addressing this particular crisis we're in or a future crisis such as this, give us the power to have that. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and, is everybody good on what this motion, what this vote is on? All right? Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
No.
Mr. Marler?
No.
Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Ms. Ramswell?
No.
Mr. Braden?
No.
Motion fails.
I'll make the substitute motion then, or another motion to go ahead and
Another
pass
motion.
the resolution as is.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to pass the resolution as written by our attorneys as is, as presented in our briefing document. We have a second? We do. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Destin?
Yes.
Mr. Marler? Yes. Mr. Overdeer?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Ramswell?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes.
You can send it.
We didn't accomplish a whole lot, I don't think, but that
No,
was
we-
interesting. We chased our tail a few times. Got
Hey,
some
it's a-
exercise.
That was about 11 minutes. I feel so refreshed. All right. And we have last on, I have no comments. So Kyle, do you have any?
I got nothing, just the public now.
Just public comments, yes. So now, step on up to the plate. This is public comment period. And
Teresa Abear, 716 Main Street. I'm really up here just to clarify what I talked about earlier on Main Street, the Joe's Bayou overlook area there. There are 2 dead pine trees. They're having, one arborist has already come in and made a quote on cutting them down. They're waiting for the next 2 arborists that have to come in and give quotes. It's always got to have 3 bid. So basically, once they get those pine trees out of the way, then they can rake out all that extra bamboo that's useless and clear all that out so that you can walk by the Main Street Bayou area and see it, and the kids can fish, and you can go out on the pier that we replaced with the that fake wood stuff so that it's not dangerous to walk on or fish off of. Thank you very much.
And we're excited to have you come back, and I know that you guys are going to meet and bring us some good ideas with that 25,000, so then we can do the budget amendment and get those improvements started as soon as possible.
Also, before I call our next person up for public comment, I do want to point out for the record that we do have our new, each council member and mayor has our new government sunshine manual that has been reviewed and presented by our city attorney. So I didn't want us to go away without acknowledging that new manual, so we have more stuff at our offices. All right, cool. Bill, you want to speak? I'm going to work this way again.
Bill Reddington, native of Destin, Florida for the last 20 years, Florida resident for 45 years. I'm just looking around the room and I don't see Nancy Pelosi, because I feel that with your resolution that you just did, you agreed with the short-term rental part, but I agree with it if you put numbers on your arms, just like they did a long time ago. And the whole point is that I'm not, well, you can shake your head no, but guess what? This was supposed to be about supporting short-term
your numbers on your arms, what was that a reference to?
So that I can remember
The
what my name
Holocaust.
Yeah, so you're referencing short-term rentals, and I mean,
Well, no,
that's a
I'd
bit
like to see,
hyperbolic.
I would like to see short-term rentals approved, because then maybe the people that are gonna be lucky enough to get the grant that y'all were talking about, they might get called back to work. Okay? But anyway, I happen to agree with Skip that it's all in favor of doing that, but in terms of adding the other stuff on there, I think that we should have been at a different time.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Jim Green, 824 North Lakeside Drive. I want to thank you for the resolution, some solidarity and putting more of that ability for our regional and local officials to have more of a hand in how that is, instead of Tallahassee running anything for us. Also, I'm president of Lake Coleman. I want to thank you for moving forward with that. Some of those quotes were appalling, if not insulting. And I want to thank you for not losing interest in that and allowing the lake owners to proceed forward trying to improve the property, our property being the lake, and also the water quality around Destin. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anyone else here in the middle? Oh, come on, Ken.
Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. Just a couple observations. One of the things that we've struggled with for the 20 years I've lived here is parking, trash, and noise, and you just approved a development order that has less than one parking spot per unit. I didn't look at you, collectively. Part of the problem that we've dealt with today as it relates to homes that were vacation rentals is parking. And I have nothing against a hotel, but you're perpetuating the same thing. And so I'd ask you to look long and hard at yourselves when we have parking issues, because the overflow for a 117 room inn, whatever you want to call it, and the employees and the service people that go there is going to get exceeded. And if you don't believe that, drive around the city of Destin and see all the parking lots for the hotels, the motels, the inns, the resorts, and the timeshares. They're packed. And they're packed because the vacation rentals obviously haven't been open. So, you know, again, I'm not saying we shouldn't have the hotel there. I'm just saying you need to think about these little decisions. The other thing, from a budget standpoint, consideration, 75% of the TDC funds are generated between March and the end of August. And so any funds that you get from the TDC, it's going to be 75% less if, obviously, we don't get open. Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we're going to get open, but at this point, you're looking at least 17% decrease in TDC funds. And so if any funds you're getting from the TDC for operations, whether it's parks, whether it's safety, whatever those things are going to be less for next year. So when you go to budget, you may want to be conservative as it relates to, you know, your payroll related to those services, because the money's just not going to be there. The other thing is BTR. You know, I love bringing BTR up again because it was a monumental waste of my time. The grant program is great. I would never say don't do a grant program for the employers that were hurt. during this COVID, because we've all felt it, but it's limited to employers of 20 individuals or less, so I don't know about you all, but that's obviously going to take out a lot of the businesses that are negatively impacted, and obviously the BTR fees are obviously going to offset that to an extent in your general funds. So as a parting request, short-term vacation rental registration fees were collected, and as you saw on that sheet that the staff did for you, it makes up 51% of those fees, and they've not been able to operate for 17% of what they've paid for. So if you're going to look at, you know, what do we do with funds that were collected that you haven't been able to use, whether it's BTR, short-term vacation rental registration fees should go into that same discussion. That's all. Thank you.
Well done, Mr. Chairman. Anyone else? Mr. Parker.
I'm Mike Parker, 827 Killaire Court. Just a reminder that this week is Destin's Week of Blessings. And so tomorrow we'll be going out to the fire departments and to the sheriff departments and to the Coast Guard and taking them barbecue and praying with them and blessing them. And Wednesday we'll have it's a little different, the blessing of the marketplace, and it's going to be a drive-through where you go through Shoreline or the First Methodist or Emmanuel. Chick-fil-A is going to provide the biscuit for you. You come through and they'll be praying for you, your family, your business. So I encourage y'all as council members and mayor, drive through, see the people and let them pray for you, because y'all need it just as much as we do, if not more. And then Thursday we have the regular blessing of the fleet, and this year the guys will definitely be praying very hard as they go through that line along with the pastors. We need the prayers. But God's seen us through the hurricanes, He's seen us through the oil spill, and He's going to see us through this. And I want to give you a personal thank you from the Charter Boat Association and the Fisherman Mayor for all the effort and work that you've put in to help the fishermen and trying to get things moving and getting us back in order. And then Friday, we're going to have a special day that we hadn't done before, and it's kind of a blessing of the restaurants and a support of the restaurants. And encourage all of you and anybody you know, tell them to come out to eat somewhere at a restaurant, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, but try to get everybody into town to go out to eat. Double tip your waiters, waitresses. You know, I mean, I'm looking at 3 right here that I know y'all's families are heavily invested in the restaurant business, and we need to bless them too. But just a reminder to put out the word. We got to pray for each other and see each other through this thing. But thank you to all the council for the work that you do. I know sometimes it's a thankless job and it's hard, and we do appreciate all the work y'all put into it.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Parker. Appreciate it. Does anyone else like to step up to the podium tonight? Mr. Broom, come on up.
Mayor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mitchell?
I know it's late and I think everybody's obviously tired, but we've had 3 people come up to the podium, 2 of the 3 touched the podium, and it hadn't been cleaned.
All right, hold on.
Sure, I clean all day at our shop, so I'm getting pretty good at this.
This is just for everybody's safety, okay?
Yep. We appreciate it. You know, I would just touch on 2 things. One is, you know, we keep talking about this short-term rental thing, and, you know, at some point, you know, if the governor is not going to do it, we need to take back our own city. You know, he may say that we can't do it, but at some point we got to take back our own city, country, everything. But anyway, you know, one of the things I wanted to say is, I have a little thing here I wrote out, but it's really to our mayor and Mayor Jarvis. You know, I think you're one of the finest mayors that we've had in a long, long time here in Destin. You've always been willing to stand up for what Destin stands for and what this city was built on. Mayor Jarvis has supported our charter, commercial, and recreational fishermen and all other businesses here in Destin. The charter fleet and short-term rentals built this city, and he represents that. For one, I can remember the days when we had few fast food places. Mrs. Chin's, the hot dog trolley, Tasty Freeze, and let's not forget the Rib Shack. Look how far Destin has come and where Mayor Jarvis has led us and the vision that he continues to move us forward. We also remember the past and what would be considered short-term rentals back then. Back then, the Rob Roy Hotel and Marina and the Crystal Beach Inn might have been considered a short-term rental. We ate at the wharf, and the rodeo had its own dock. Mayor Jarvis has stood up for the heritage of this city, and I'm proud to have him as our mayor. I have seen many people I've not seen many people put in the hours representing our fleet and our city in Washington, and then has fought so hard for the community rights, and we support him for that. And I thank you, Mayor Jarvis. And the rest of our city council, I respect y'all also, and all the hard work that y'all have done. We have been in some very trying times, and every one of y'all, we appreciate the effort that y'all have put into to try to make this city better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none. What?
And Matt and Ray, if they have anything.
Oh, yeah. Nothing, Matt?
None.
Ray, you got any emails? Drum roll, please.